big five delusions, as you said. There's really five.
Okay. Well, okay. I think I'll just sing a little prayer first. The first two lines are for anybody in the room who already kind of identifies with being a Buddhist, so it's reminding us of our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings. And the second two lines are for all of us. It's stating, the Tibetans would say, stating our motivation for our being here together. We might say, what's our purpose, why are we here together, what are we doing? Well, we're going to listen, I presume, me too, definitely me too, even though I'm talking, listen to these ideas about the mind, about happiness, about suffering, from the Buddha's views about this. And why are we listening? To see if there's some tools we can take, it's got to be practical. I mean, you don't have to take the tools, but that's what it's, so hear it as advice. Even if you walk out the door with 1%, that's fantastic, go for it, But it's tools for what? Well, very simply, to develop what for the Buddha is our pretty amazing potential, and I'll talk about, for our sake, and then because we all live in this crazy world together, for the sake of others. So it's like Buddha says a bird needs two wings, wisdom and compassion. So I'll just sing this little prayer in Tibetan that expresses these ideas. Sangye charang soke choknam la chanchu badu dagni kyap suchi tagi chanyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupasho sangye charang soke choknam la chanchu badu dagni kyap suchi tagi chanyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupasho sangye charang soke choknam la chanchu badu dagni kyap suchi tagi chanyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupasho. Well, the five delusions sounds kind of peculiar, isn't it? So let's give some context here. You really could say that Buddha's expertise is the mind. I mean, that might be surprising for us, because when we think of Buddhism, we think of mindful and meditation and monks and nuns and holy and walking slowly and all this stuff, right? All sorts of ideas. But basically, when you strip it all away, the mind is Buddha's expertise. And that's probably a surprise to us also because we have no idea. I mean, we kind of vaguely know Buddha's Indian, especially us. Well, not all white people in this room, are we? But, European, I'm Australian, come back to French, the English, and back to the Europeans. Well, we Europeans are very arrogant. We Christian, Judeo-Christian people are very arrogant. We think the Greeks are the great ones. We track ourselves back to the Greeks. But what do we know about Africa? What do we know about Asia? What do we know about India? Absolutely zero. So we vaguely know Buddha's Indian, I mean, look at me, looking like an Indian here with my dress, right? But we don't understand is that this astonishing amazing practitioners living at that time. I mean, Dalai Lama, I remember saying, it was these amazing Indians more than 3,000 years ago who were the ones who began the investigation into the nature of self. Well, we Europeans probably thought it was Freud 100 years ago, I mean, isn't it? 3,000 years ago. But what do we know about that? Zero. They're the ones who created this. I mean, they're the ones who created this technique that the world vaguely knows as mindfulness meditation, which actually is this amazing psychological skill that enables us to unpack and unravel and deconstruct the contents of our own mind. And I'm not talking the brain here. Buddha doesn't discuss the brain. You ask these dudes back then where their brain was, they would not have a clue. But they know their mind, their consciousness, their thoughts, their feelings, their emotions. That's the stuff of the Buddhist approach. So knowing it internally, which it seems weird to us, is really the job of being a Buddhist. As Lama Yeshe puts it, being our own therapists. So why would we want to do that? Where were they coming from, these Indians? I mean, okay, Buddha eventually diverged in his own direction 2,500 years ago, directly in relation to his experiential findings about the nature of self. That's how come we now have so-called Buddhism, But these Indians before him, I mean, there's astonishing worldviews existing at the time, amazing practitioners, great philosophers, great meditators, great spiritual practitioners, really extraordinary at the time, The literature is only really now becoming familiar in the West because of the Dalai Lama. I mean, the last 20, 30, 40 years, I think, he's been having these amazing conferences with all the best brains in our culture, the best scientists and so on, who have never heard of this stuff before, but now because of him are learning about it and are beginning to compare all these different worldviews, which is marvellous, I think, I remember one scientist said that neuroplasticity is the greatest finding of the 20th century. I mean, that's coming directly as a result of people, the scientists communicating with meditators and putting like wires on their brains and discovering that we're not stuck with the brain we're born with, which is what we used to think. This is just very much reiterating what Buddha has been telling us all this time. Okay, what is Buddha telling us? Well, essentially, it's really simple. The word Buddha tells us, really. The first syllable, Bud, it's Sanskrit, the first syllable, Bud, implies the complete eradication from one's own mind, one's own being, of all neuroses, all ego, all fears, all attachment, anger, jealousy, low self-esteem, depression. I mean, we know these words intimately. And in our culture, you know, there's no view like that. This is an insane idea, that you can utterly get rid of all this stuff. I mean, in our culture, we assume that's a normal part of a normal person. So normal, you'd be abnormal if you didn't have it. And it's true when we think of this, that you can get rid of all attachment, all fears, all anger, all ego, even all sense of separate me. This is insane, extraordinary. That's the first thing that Buddha is saying. The second syllable, da, implies, you know, the development to perfection of all the other stuff in our mind. Love, intelligence, kindness, compassion, wisdom, generosity, forgiveness. We are so familiar with these words. And then these aren't fancy terms that we use in modern psychology. This is the stuff of what Buddha's talking about. This is the stuff of Buddhist psychology. And he has found from his own experience. And this is the other radical difference for the Buddha. He's not a creator. He doesn't assert a creator. Okay, if you've got faith in God, I'm not trying to insult you. But there's no concept like that in Buddhism at all. There's no concept. He's got very different views about reality, you know. So this is the other point too. If he's not a creator, well, where does all this information come from? I noticed that we all ask the same questions. I noticed that all over the world we ask the same questions, you know. And I remember in New Zealand, this scientist, in Nelson, he asked, who revealed the teachings to the Buddha? Which is a really valid question. If you have the usual view of religion, that's fine. I was a Catholic, a very good Catholic. I mean, well, I was naughty, but I love God. You know, a good Catholic. You know, almost religions that we know of, the major religions in the world, they all assert a creator, that the universe is made by a creator. We are made by a creator. The laws are made by a creator. So the creator runs the show. Creator's the boss. Creator punishes and creator rewards. We know that. That's just a given for us. That's not anything remotely like that in Buddhism, which is quite shocking to us. So when I said to him, when he asked who revealed the teachings to the Buddha, because that's correct if you're a Christian or a Jew, because it's from revelation, it's from on high, it's from God, you know. When I said, well, would you ask Einstein who revealed the teachings about relativity to him? No, you wouldn't. So Buddha's more like that, and this is a bit shocking to us to hear. Okay, Buddha's asserting things that you can't see with your eyes or even a microscope. Consciousness, he says, is not physical. Consciousness comes from previous lives. Consciousness will continue. He's got a very different view about things, but it's all come from his own experience, his own observation. So you don't have to believe him. He's not asking you to believe him. In the same way that Einstein, I'm not saying, he's not, if I'm Einstein telling you about relativity, I am not asking you to believe. If you did, you'd throw me out the door, guaranteed. And I'm not telling you I had a vision of it, I had a dream of it. I'm not telling you I made it up, I'm speculating, no. I've done my observations, I've done my analysis, here are my findings, here are my methodology, over to you if you want to prove the same thing. Buddha's saying the same. And as the Dalai Lama says to us, Westerners, you know, if you pop along following Buddha's methodology step by step, ticking the boxes as you go, and you get to a point where you prove that he's wrong, then you must reject him. Of course you must. That's very much the approach in Buddhism. So, okay, then Buddha's not a creator. All this information, so he is saying we've got this marvelous potential, and he tells us that. Why? Because he says he's accomplished it himself. Here's my methodology. So let's analyse that, because on the face of it, the words are simple, but it's a very weird concept. You can get rid of all ego, all fears, all neurosis, all depression, all anxiety, all the rest. Now, we know this is normal stuff, and I think, as I said, in our culture, we give equal status to it, along with love and kindness and compassion. We kind of hope we've got a bit more love and kindness and compassion and intelligence than all the rubbish, but we can certainly see in the world that some people have got a lot of the rubbish, but we just think it's normal human being, a normal human being. Well, Buddha says, no, it's suffering. It's illness, and he's got the Buddhist methods, basically, are the methods to help us first identify that stuff and then learn to get rid of it. And okay, it's a very different series of assumptions here, but that's essentially what he's saying. So, okay, then why, if we can recognize depression, anxiety, anger, jealousy, low self-esteem, arrogance, either in other people or ourselves, then if it's true, we can get rid of them. And forget even get rid of them, even just think change them. And that's what neuroscience is now getting to see, that we're not stuck, they talk about the brain, we're not stuck with the brain we're born with. By thinking differently, we can reconfigure our brain. So that the brain for me is a really, the Western, the Buddhist way of saying it, probably for a brain, it's a physical indicator, I would put it this way, of what's going on in our thoughts and feelings and emotions, because that's very internal for the Buddha. He's not talking about a brain. He's talking about the actual cognitive process itself, the emotions and feelings and thoughts to a very subtle level themselves. And that's the Buddha's job, to learn to become super familiar with these thoughts and feelings and emotions. And to do that job, according to Buddha, you don't need to know where your mind, you don't need to know whether your brain's in your skull or your toenail. It doesn't matter. We all know we can hear our thoughts, and we all know we get angry. We all know we have jealousy. I wouldn't have a clue which part of my brain is ticking when I'm jealous. I don't need to know it. It's helpful to know it if I'm a neuroscientist, but I don't need to know it. I can hear the jealousy. So we learn. So then the reason the Buddha's saying we can get rid of it. Well, first of all, why would you want to get rid of it? That's a really good question. Because if you think you'd kind of be weird if you didn't have anger and jealousy, well, don't bother. But it seems to me if we analyse, when you say you're jealous, when you say you're depressed, check how you feel. We all know it's horrible. Even though I'm going to blame my mean boyfriend, I'm going to blame Ed for being mean to me. Even though I know I blame him, I know the jealousy is so painful. And that's one of the real indicators, It's horrible, absolutely painful. We know that, without exception. So the other point that Buddha makes, and this is in the Buddhist model of the mind, it's really interesting, is that they've got, these states of mind have got a very particular way of functioning. And this is not immediately evident to us. But if I explain, you'll agree. So, anger, for example. Okay, let's step back a bit. In the Buddhist model, he describes the contents of our mind, our consciousness, all our thoughts and feelings and emotions, if you like, into three categories. This seems very simplistic to us, Look at complexity of modern psychology, the names of new diseases. I mean, there must be volumes of them, and every day we're discovering something new. Well, Buddha hasn't changed his tune in 2,500 years. He feels he's covered the lot, And he used these really simple words. He hasn't changed that one at all. So he talks about all these different sufferings in our mind, these different mental states. One category, they're delusions, or one of the terms they use is delusions, or the old-fashioned word they use from the Sanskrit and from the Tibetan is the word afflictions, which is like suffering, very clear. Delusions, unhappy emotions, neuroses, a nice Greek word, that's good enough. Disturbing emotions, when you're jealous, you're disturbed. When you're angry, you're disturbed. When your wife's left you or beating you up, you're just deeply disturbed. We know the pain is obvious, but the other particular characteristic for these negative ones, and we're going to go into them, unhappy ones, is they're delusional. And I'll go into that. That sounds a bit shocking, If someone accuses you of being delusional, you'll be very offended. So let's look at that one. It's very specific. Then, then we can see the second category are all the positive ones. Love, compassion, kindness, intelligence, wisdom. They're the stuff that we know are nice. Whether you're on the receiving end of them or whether they're in you, then you're happy, you're content, you're fulfilled, you're not distressed, you're not disturbed, you're not unhappy, you're not delusional. So Buddha makes this massive distinction. And the third category, really they call it neutral, but that's misleading because it doesn't mean they're not important. There's positive and virtuous ones, there's unhappy and negative and ridiculous ones. And then there's this, I like to call these third lot, the mechanics of our mind, like concentration, good memory. They're necessary. And whether you're a murderer or a meditator, you need them, If you're a sniper, you need very good concentration. If you're trying to meditate, you need very good concentration. So they're not good or bad in their nature, but they're crucial parts of our mind. They enable us to function. So there are the three categories. So our concern is these first two. So the trouble is now these words sound easy enough. Anger is easy when we say it. We can kind of visualise a person angry. If we say loving, we can imagine that. But the trouble is they're mixed together like a big soup. And because we don't have this view in our culture that really makes this utter distinction between them, such that Buddha says you can rid the mind of all the rubbish and grow all the goodness, then that's a very specific approach, So that's why we have to have what they call concentration meditation. The world knows it vaguely as mindfulness. This very specific technical skill, psychological skill that enables us to get really clear focus. And why do you need focus? Because you want to learn to start to unpack and unravel what on earth's going on in our mind. And Tibetans point here, interestingly, not up here, So then let's look at the unhappy ones. These, as Jason says, the big five, the five. I mean, there's dozens of them. Buddha talks about, in fact, 84,000 distinct different problems in the mind. But luckily he narrows it down to 3. You can add a couple more to it, you know. But these 3 are very specific. So the biggest one, the main one, the root delusion, the root affliction, the root neurosis, if you like, is called ego grasping. It sounds kind of strange. It's this powerful, unhappy, fear-based sense of a kind of neurotic me. It's most of the time asleep. But when someone insults you, when you nearly have a car accident, when something really terrible happens, we know the pain of this one, it arises. It's like a panic attack. It's so dreadful, so uncomfortable. But that's really quite subtle, this one, and this is where Buddha finally gets to when he looks into this one really deeply, and that's more advanced practice. But what that gives rise to are 2 of these, 2 main ones. And even if we understand these 2, not to mention, apart from ego grasping, but 2 plus another 3 that Jason's talking about, these 2 are really profound for Buddhism. The words are really cute. The words are attachment and anger. Attachment and aversion. So what are they? Lama Yesi said one time, I can tell you about attachment for 1 whole year. You will never begin to understand it until we start to go deep inside our minds, you know. So let's look at it, and let's look at this absolutely intimate link, intimate relationship with anger. This, if we understand attachment and anger in the way Buddhist psychology describes it, we will have a deep understanding of our own mind and of everybody else's. It's very interesting, you know. Because Buddha says we've all got these delusions. All got these, just a variation, a question of the degree, that's all, you know. So attachment's the major one. The Buddha says that's effectively the main source of our suffering in daily life. Now, if that's true, we better know what he means by it, because it ain't what we mean by it. There's a really crucial point. As Lama Zopa says, you know, when we hear that Buddha says we've got to give up attachment, we go, oh, I've got to give up my heart, I've got to give up my happiness. No, because we misuse the word. I mean, or at least, no, you can have more than one definition of a word, can't you? You know, like, when we used to, in Australia, we used to live in flats. Now we live in apartments, don't we, because we're all Americanised. But then we live in a flat once. Maybe we still do. But if I've never heard of geometry and I've been told that that's flat, and I hear about it for the first time and I've only ever heard of a flat living in it, oh, I've got to live there? But we all know it's got another definition. That's easy. So here it's the same. Our definition of attachment is like being close to somebody. Nothing wrong with that. But Buddha uses another definition. It's another state of mind. He's not talking about that state of mind. He's talking about another state of mind. So if I describe it to you, you'll recognise it. And it's multifaceted. Well, the first level of attachment, and Buddha says we're born with it, is called dissatisfaction. This is the energy of dissatisfaction, meaning this is deep assumption in our bones that I'm just not enough. No matter what I get, not enough. No matter what I hear, not enough. No matter what I achieve, not enough. No matter how much weight I lose, not enough. No matter how I look in the mirror, I'm never enough. No matter how much money I get, never enough. No matter how much Ed tells me he loves me, never enough. We are like bottomless pits of dissatisfaction. We recognise that, and it's very primordially deep inside us. So that's the most energetic level, and then a next aspect of attachment on the basis of that. If you never feel you have enough, of course you're going to always look for something to fill you up, aren't you? Pretty obvious. That's the most obvious level. That's this hankering after something out there. And why out there? Because let's face it, that's the world we live in. We even believe that life is out there somewhere, and we've got to find it, you know? So we're looking for objects that will make us happy. We're looking for an object such that when we have contact with it, then we're convinced that will fill up the gaping hole and bring me satisfaction, bring me even happiness. So what's that? Well, the cakes and the bodies and the money and the handbags and you name it. Attachment is limitless in its capacity to find something to glom itself onto. And then we believe totally, when I get it, I'll get happy. We know that, and this is completely instinctive. We don't question it. Then the next aspect, after the kind of hungering for something, because you feel like you're missing something, then what this attachment does, and this is its key job, it exaggerates. So if I'm really hungry for the boy, feeling I'm missing out, I'm lonely, I don't have anyone to love me, I'm nobody, I'm worthless, I'm useless, and I believe that getting Ed will bring me happiness, and that for sure is the major attachment, because our entire lifestyle is that, isn't it? You get a person, you get a house, you have babies, or variations of that now, but that's a really powerful one. And the deepest assumption here, because it does seem to trigger the most pleasure, initially anyway, is that's, now I finally found happiness. I finally found my soulmate, we say. So this attachment, the key function of it, it exaggerates the deliciousness of Ed. I'm sorry, Ed. It exaggerates Ed's deliciousness. Now we know that one. Think of when you're in love. Think of you when you're in love. I mean, I remember the person was completely like divine. You faint with pleasure. We know this. And then think about even the boring old chocolate cake. Look how delicious that looks. Now, the point is, we know in our lives, but it seems very cruel to point it out, we know that what happens, because, okay, one more brutal way of saying what attachment is this junkie inside us that is frantic to get what I want. It's really sounds very brutal, but it's very hard for us to see this. Attachment is this frantic kind of voice version. So, anger sounds quite a strong one. Many people might not get volatile and angry, but basically these two have this intimate relationship, and maybe a better word for the bare bones state of mind beneath anger, it's simply called aversion. So attachment is this kind of, oh, that's lovely, and you go towards it, and you want it, and aversion goes, oh, no. Well, there's a whole spectrum of aversion. So the obvious one, the volatile response when attachment doesn't get what it wants, that's called anger. Now I know that one, that was like my middle name. I'm very familiar with it. You understand, you shout and yell and scream. And we know some people like that. But there are some of us who aren't like that. Some of us don't shout and yell, but we know inside that something went wrong and we're feeling freaked out. Internally though, it's like maybe even just mild versions of aversion, which is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. Irritation, annoyed, upset, frustrated, ordinary words that we just think are normal. You don't go to your therapist and say, I got upset today. She wants you to come only when you want to kill Ed, not just get upset with him. So in other words, we wait till it's too late, So aversion is this anger, irritation, annoyance, frustration, and internally it becomes depression and despair. And that's very common. For people who don't shout and yell, you don't shout and yell, and you probably would never say you have anger, but you definitely have aversion, which means throughout the day, your attachment doesn't get what it wants. The hubby doesn't say the right thing. The kids don't come home in time. Something goes wrong. The red lights. The food was wrong. You dropped the cup washing the dishes. You read bad news. Then immediately attachment gets upset because it can't cope with ugly things. So that's called aversion. It's called aversion. And the fact is, Buddha says, there's nothing we experience with our mind that ever goes astray. Everything gets stored. So throughout a day, we're not dealing with the ordinary upsets and frustrations and irritations and annoyances. We just think they're normal, but we don't process them either. So they build up, and by the end of the day, wonder why you're depressed. You wonder why you're miserable. You've forgotten all the 1,000 events in the day that went wrong, but we don't pay attention to them until they're violent, or until you can't get out of bed one morning because you're depressed. Do you understand, people? So we're not, in other words, it's not a mysterious thing for the Buddha. It's because we don't pay attention to what is going on in our mind until you're screaming or you want to kill yourself or Ed. That's our problem. That's the big problem. There's nothing mystical about this. And that's why by the time we do feel we have to go to a therapist, we're so distressed, we feel guilty to sneak in the back door because we feel so ashamed. But we've never been taught to look at our minds with respect to us. We suppress everything, we don't pay attention, and then the other thing we do, which is the tragic one, which really prevents us from looking inside, we blame everybody else. And that's automatic, it's deep in our bones to do that, to blame the person, to blame Ed for my anger, to blame Ed for my upset. So Ed mightn't have put the toilet seat down, Ed might have even punched me in the nose, Ed might have looked at the other girl. These aren't denied, but the Buddha's saying the key job to do, and this is what's really hard, is to begin to notice my responses to it and to see that they are the source of my pain. I mean, this is so hard to bear. This is so hard, and initially it feels like unfair. What do you mean? She did do that to me. She did leave me. She did abuse me. What do you mean I am the cause of my suffering? It's really hard for us to hear this. And Buddha's not trying to be moralistic and heavy. He's not trying to blame us. All he's saying is, hey honey, if you can change something, please change it. But what if you can't? And that's where this practice kicks in. If Ed does exactly what I want every day, I'll call that happiness, although it won't last. And that's a deeper level of attachment. If he does exactly what I want, because attachment's a control freak. Attachment is the control freak part of us because it wants what I want all the time. And it'll look nice, so I'll speak to him sweetly. Oh, darling, do put the toilet seat down, you know. He'll think I love him. I'm just trying to get what I want. You understand? So in other words, attachment can be under the guise of being kind. Do you understand? But attachment can't cope with problems. It can't cope with anything not being what I want. Now we kind of recognise this and we think it sounds like a petulant child. Well, actually, attachment is a petulant child in every one of us, but a question of degree. And if we have any suffering and pain, it's because of that. Because why? Because anger is the result of attachment. And then guess what? Jealousy comes from that. After that, jealousy comes from anger and attachment. Pride comes from those. All the others, I mean, there are thousands of them. They all come. They all come from those. The root is this ego grasping, this ridiculous, neurotic, wrong sense of self, which is real subtle, and don't even go there. And then there's this constant hunger, feeling I'm not having enough, not got enough, therefore this attachment only wants what I want, and we are convinced that when I get this and this and this, I'll then be happy. So we have to manipulate the world to make it just so I'll get happy. And it's kind of frantic. But the trouble is, it's not easy to identify. We can see some people are like this really rampantly, it's evident. But we've all got that. But the irony is, what makes it hard to see is because we also have love and kindness and generosity and forgiveness and compassion. They're all there as well. But they're kind of making it harder to see the rubbish because they all come together. Like, you know, they're like the weeds and the herbs. Well, if your weeds very politely grew down one end of your garden and the herbs grew down the other, you wouldn't have a problem identifying them, would you? But because they're all mixed together in a big soup, you can't tell one bit from another because these are really deep inside us, these thoughts and feelings and emotions, you know. And this is the key job of being a Buddhist, using meditation or using skill to hear our own thoughts, not always looking out there. Hear our own thoughts and start to identify the ones that cause me pain, and to identify ones that are good for me, that are virtuous and happy, and begin to grow the good stuff and lessen the rubbish, you know. That's the essence of being a Buddhist, all the way to perfection, I promise. That's the essence of it. But the hardest job we'll ever do. And again, there are various reasons why that job is hard. One is mainly because since the time we're born, and every time we wake up in the morning until the end of the day, where do we put our attention? To the outside world. Watching the people, the things. We've got to navigate the world. We've got to have our senses working properly. So we don't pay attention here until it's too late. That's the tragedy. So we have to learn the skill to notice my thoughts and feelings, and not in a kind of wishy-washy way. The Buddhists would be very precise about it. Very precise, very clear. And then to own them as mine, and that's the part that's hard, because the way we're brought up, and it's just what we believe totally, I'm angry, yes, but I'm allowed to be angry. Look what Ed did. That's how we talk. You know, let's say Ed's cheating on me, and I'm broken-hearted with jealousy and unhappiness and rage. And someone says, you know, Robina, you could change, you could be less jealous. I'll be shocked. What are you talking about? Why should I? He's the problem. He should change. Why should I? That's how we talk, isn't it? But this is the point. Buddha's not trying to be mean. He's saying, well, if you can stop him from cheating, please go for it. But what if you can't? And even if you can, still better to work on your mind. This is the essence of being a Buddhist. And it's not as if he owns this stuff. We get this. We're probably doing this every day. You know, you're unhappy with your sister and you decide not to say anything. You just practice. You just decided not to be mean. We do this all the time. That's all this job really is, but get at a more sophisticated level, and we get better and better and better at it. Okay, so what's the benefit of this? Guess what? You'll be happy. That's the part. That's the part that's really hard to hear. Because we know when bad things happen. The boyfriend leaves, the wife leaves, they take, you know, things happen. I mean, people's ordinary lives are unbearable. Forget if you're in a war zone. Forget that. Forget that. Just our ordinary lives. Pain happens, and it's usually in relationships. We know that. You know, unbearable, the pain at work, bosses, people going against us, colleagues, families, partners. I mean, the pain is unbearable. And the extent of our pain is the extent of our attachment. This deeply instinctive hunger that there's my happiness, and you go and imagine and put all these projections onto things. And we don't realise we're doing this. It's just so automatic. And we don't question it. So then when attachment doesn't get what it wants, that's 1,000 times a day, but when it seriously doesn't get what it wants, that's the anger, that's the aversion, that's the pain, that's the jealousy, that's the despair, you know. I mean, we either end up killing ourselves or the other person. It's just so unbearable. The pain is so unbearable. We know this. So the Buddha's expertise is to become familiar with those states of mind. And by owning them as mine, this is the part that's hard. This is the part that's hard. Yes, Ed did not do the right thing. Fact. Buddha even agrees. But he says, that's Ed's problem. Now what's mine? And this is very, very hard to hear, especially with all our romantic notions in our culture about relationships, you know, and all the expectations we put onto each other. And expectations is a major function of attachment. You totally believe, I believe that his job is to make me happy. I mean, that's a given in our world, and we put that in the sky as something so special. That's the romantic notion we have, that it's Ed's job to make me happy. Now, theoretically, it sounds wonderful. We all should want to make others happy. That's called love and compassion. That's incredible. You can't argue with that. But to have the expectation, this frantic neediness, this emotional hunger, that it's his job to make me happy, that's the pain. That's the difficulty. Because it's not possible to expect him that. It's an unfair expectation. He's a regular person like me. It's an impossible expectation. It's like asking too much of a person. But that's why we get so upset. Have all these assumptions, we don't analyse them, we don't question them, we implicitly agree upon them, and then the problems start. Because we're ordinary human beings without problems. And, you know, when you have the romantic notion of somebody, you don't see the real person at all. You see a fantasy. And then you expect your fantasy to live like that. It's not like that. So we become so disappointed, so devastated, so despairing, so upset, so jealous, so angry because of attachment. There's this huge state of mind that pervades our minds, Buddha says, you know. So learning to become familiar with it, and there's layers and layers and layers of it. We've got to start somewhere. But this is interesting. This is the key job. But this is not the first job. This is a really hard job. Now, the first job to do, you know, like I'm using sort of an analogy of like junior school, high school. We're talking high school here. Now, what's junior school? Well, that's control your body and speech. And I swear to you, if we did that in this world, the world would be a happy place. But this is where we have in our culture, zero interest in body and speech. We don't even think it matters. We think, oh, I can say what I like. And our feeling is because when I'm feeling something, I can't wait for Ed to come home so I can vomit it out my mouth on top of him. You know, it's true, isn't it? Because he has to hear what I feel. Because why? Because I don't know. I don't know what to do with my feelings. I've got to vomit them out on Ed, and then blame. We do this. So the thing is, the Buddhist view is, given the delusions are the cause of our problem and the cause of the suffering between us, my first job is to harness my verbal and physical energy and try not to punch and try not to vomit out on him. This is the hardest job we'll ever do. Unbelievable. Especially when there's problems. Especially if he's cheated on me or something. I mean, it's impossible to contain ourselves. We're just completely compelled to say the words. It seems almost impossible not to. It seems bizarre for us not to say the words. So say the words, but it should be, you know, not violent, not angry. But this is really hard. This is so hard. Even this is junior school level. This is hard. Even when you have a little fight with your sister, it's almost impossible to control your mouth. It has to come out, doesn't it? But this is, you know, I mean, there's a course this weekend in Bendigo at a teacher centre. We were discussing all this stuff, and one of the men there, his wife, recent wife, with their 10-month-old baby, she confessed to cheating on him with a colleague at work. I mean, I can imagine the pain, you know, the 10-month-old baby, the hardly long relationship, and she's cheating on him already. So she decides she stops sleeping with him, she said. He said to her, talking about it in the group. But he wants to be her friend still. So he's really, I mean, I was so impressed. He's really, he said, tried to control his mouth. He has not got angry. He hasn't freaked out. Internally, really struggling. That's really profound. He's not hidden what he's feeling, but he doesn't want to cause more troubles. And that can be difficult. Some people will never say anything because they're terrified of the person upsetting them, being upset. But if there's a volatile thing like that, you're so courageous not to vomit out your feelings, not to rage on. Look how people shout and yell, you know. So to control that is so powerful, because we all know, even in ordinary relationships, forget about the intense partner one, as soon as the words are out your mouth, it's too late. You've said it. You can't bring it back, you know. We know that. Words are so powerful. So to be able to harness our body and speech and control what we say and do, this already is incredible practice. This already is incredible discipline. But that needs real courage. Because when the emotion is so strong, it's like unbearable to contain it, isn't it? And that's why we have to have good friends to talk to. Whether it's a therapist, I don't care, but it's a good friend you can cry your heart out to organise what you feel and think. Because once you add speech and then punching on top of it, then it's a nightmare. Then it's lost. You lost the plot, you know. Nothing can be healed. It's very difficult. So we understand all this stuff. We recognise it, you know. I think you should ask me some questions now. Let's have a discussion. I think all this kind of conversation comes best with a conversation. So come on. Any old questions? Talk to me. So start the ball rolling.
Robina, may I ask, as an adopted child, I do tend to hold on to a lot of, as you were saying before, as a lot of rejection issues.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
How would you think that maybe I could
heal your own little heart? You mean?
Yeah.
Well, it's a very interesting point. I always give this example, and it doesn't mean it's easy.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine, doesn't matter who it is, a close friend of mine, when I was younger, she was pregnant. This is in the 60s, and I had an abortion. A couple of my sisters had an abortion, and this person, she was also a Catholic.
Yeah.
She was 17 or 16, got pregnant, and she decided she wouldn't have an abortion. We kept saying, have an abortion, have an abortion. No, she said, I'm not going to have an abortion. And she decided she'd give the baby away.
Yeah.
Now, I happen to know her motive was very pure. She consciously decided not to kill the baby. I'm not being rude. I mean, I had an abortion.
Yeah, no.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Definitely.
In this case, she consciously decided, and then her heart broke for like 30 years because she felt the pain, the ache of the loss of giving this baby away. Now, one of the meditations we do in the Buddhist one, we think all different kinds of meditations, and one is where we try to develop loving kindness. One of the meditations is trying to think of the kindness of a mother. Now, you probably would think your mother has not been kind, but you know what? She didn't abort you. Now, if someone rushed out on the road and saved your life, you'd never forget them as long as you live, would you? You would never forget them, would you? Well, this person didn't abort you. Can you hear that? So start to think of what she has done. Start to think of the one good thing she did for you. She didn't abort you. And especially if you analyse in the ones, not being critical, there are far more abortions, or miscarriages even, than people having birth.
Yeah.
So is that one to think about for you, the kindness of this person?
It does, only that I've reconnected with her and she doesn't...
Oh, okay, so I see, so that's a different discussion. Well, still, never mind, but that's...
Yes.
Okay,
I need to get over it.
No, don't say it like that. We all have to look at what it is we're feeling. And has it always been that way, even before you met her? You always felt the sense of loss and given away. People talk about that. What is it? Abandonment issues they talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do a Buddhist analysis of it.
Okay.
Shall I do a Buddhist analysis?
Yes, please.
I might. It's up to you to take all this. Well, first of all, the Buddhist view is about karma. Our consciousnesses go back and back and back. We're not created by anybody. I'm not trying to insult you if you have faith in a creator.
Yeah.
Our conscious does not need creating, Buddha says, and he's got a whole view about this. And this has been in India before that too. This view that your consciousness is not physical, it's a continuity of mental moments. It goes back and back in countless lifetimes. So the fact that your mind ran like a magnet, not many weeks after you passed away from a previous life, you ran like a magnet to that mother. You have a very strong karmic connection with that mother. Buddha says karma is not random. Nothing can be random. It's very precisely your mind found its way due to past strong history with this woman. Your mind found its way to her fallopian tube. Presume she jumped into bed with a boy. I mean, you weren't conceived in a petri dish, were you? You conceived the old-fashioned one. So, okay. So your mind ran like a magnet to her womb. You had a strong karmic connection. So one of the approaches in this with Buddhism was very powerful, is if you realise that you're an equal participant in the scenario. She didn't make you. She did not. She's lying there with this boy having fun, and you butt your nose in. You come barging in, you know. So in other words, you played a very powerful role in your past life to get this mother, and therefore you can deduce for her to give you up. So that's the karmic one. And for Tibetans, this is something in their bones of their being. It's been in India for several thousand years, this view, and it's a world view that's very articulated. And the Buddhists, it's especially powerful. So, for a Buddhist, and to say like the Tibetans especially, it's just since they're born, this is the view they have. Like, we're born to think that mummy made us, and, do you understand that things are random? But they just have the view of karma, and because of that, they're not very angry. They don't have this view of how dare that happen to me, I don't deserve it, because they know they created the cause for it. Do you understand? And that's a huge one. I can know for myself, being a Buddhist and trying to take it seriously, that's a major one for me that's really helped me change radically in my life. By owning responsibility, even the fact that you went to that mother's womb, that you got a strong karmic connection with her, and whatever, and the Buddha says by definition, everything that happens to us, good or bad, is the fruit of our own past actions. So you created the cause to have that mummy. You created the cause by your past actions of rejecting her, by her rejecting you. But equally, she also decided not to kill you. I mean, you could argue she decided not to have an abortion, which is pretty amazing. You should, for that alone, you should think about that, because she could have aborted you. Did she ever tell you about this and why she didn't abort you? Because it's so common in the world, people abort. Do you see what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you hear my point? That she didn't abort you, she didn't kill you. That's pretty special. You don't look impressed by that point at all.
I hear it from you, Robina. I don't think she had the option to do that. If she
okay, then put it this way, you didn't create the cause to get killed, so thank yourself.
Yeah.
Do you understand my point? You didn't create the cause to get killed. I mean, I had an abortion when I was 23. And it was England, it was 1968, I was 23, and I felt lucky because the National Health had just started accepting to pay for abortions. So it was so easy for me, it was so easy. Everything worked well, the hospital was kind, I stayed in the hospital, they looked after me, it was all free, I felt quote unquote lucky. Well, in other words, you put the karmic view in Buddhism, the being who came to my womb, and the second I was with this boy, I was a hippie at the time, and I did what hippies did, and I was with this boy, who was Australian, was in Earl's Court, just getting too much information. I remembered vividly, And I remember the second I was with him, I thought, oh no, I'm pregnant. I knew, I didn't put the words then, this consciousness came into my womb. Now, that person created the cause to come to me, they won the lottery and got a human birth, but they created the cause for me to kill them. And it all happened so easily, all so easily.
Yeah.
So then the karmic one puts responsibility on our part. It doesn't happen overnight. The consequences of it, of thinking about it, don't happen overnight. But it's very powerful as an antidote. But that's up to you. Now the other one is, and see sometimes the pain we have, whether it's attached to food and you can't stop eating it, jealous easily, all these habits we've got are very deep, sweetheart. They don't go overnight. So that we've got to do some analysis of some argument to argue with it. Not expecting it to go disappear, but instead of just believing in the same story that the pain and the ache you're having, you've got to argue with these misconceptions and slowly loosen the grip of those stories. Find ways to, even the fact that you said she had no choice, still the fact is it didn't happen,
Yeah.
And then another one that's really hard to see. Okay, in your life, obviously you're a nice person, but in your life have you ever said or done anything mean to anybody at all? Ever in your life since you're born? Okay, good. Now, let me ask you, we either have attachment and anger and jealousy and hurt, or we have love and kindness and compassion. Do you agree? So anytime you hurt anybody, it wasn't because you were feeling loving and kind, was it?
No.
It's because you're feeling hurt and rejected and sad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right there. That proves when you're unhappy, you harm others. You with me?
Definitely.
And when you understand your own unhappiness, you'll own that, and then you'll see, look at the suffering I've caused myself, and then you'll see this is why you harm others. Well, think of your mother. Think of your mother. She must be a very suffering person. So, but we don't want to think that. We think she's mean, and she shouldn't have done that, but the only reason she's harming anybody, just like you, is because she's unhappy. Are you hearing me?
Definitely.
Are you really? So that should bring compassion eventually, slowly if you can. But first you've got to kind of have compassion for yourself first. Don't just wash it over. Don't just push it away,
I don't, and that's
good.
That I don't have compassion for myself.
No, well, that's very typical. We don't, darling. We love to hate ourselves. Don't we?
We
But
do.
but it really seems like you're working on it.
I am.
That's wonderful, darling, and you're going in the right direction. Be very happy. You're going in the right direction, darling.
Thank
You're not sitting here being so bitter and just shouting and yelling and blaming.
No.
Well, that's the main
No.
thing, sweetheart.
No,
You're going in the right direction. You are healing your heart already. And eventually one day you'll see this, this woman who's sad and due to her own inadequacies, she did these actions. But you are an equal participant in it. Try and think of that part. That's an interesting one from the point of view of karma. Do you understand, darling?
I do. Thank you.
Good. Who else? Come on, anybody? Any questions whatsoever? Yes.
I had a question on free will.
Yes.
A lot of quantum physicists say we're living in a stimulation, that there is no actual free will.
They say there is or not?
There's not. So then
Okay, what do they mean? What do they mean, these quantum physicists?
Vajrasattva fraction and other things. If there's no free will, what's going to happen is going to happen. then what's the point of some other people?
No, I understand. Well, you know, first of all, let's give the appropriate. Let's look to the source of that concept. It's kind of interesting we use it even now in scientific terms. It's actually, I'm not being rude, it's a Christian teaching.
Yeah.
And the very specific view in Christianity, and I was a good Catholic, and I'm just stating it because it's a particular philosophical view, isn't it? That God made me and God gave me free will. So it's a concept that I can't use in Buddhism because it has no meaning. So then free will is the point. It's kind of weird. And I think we tend to think of it as we make choices. But of course we make choices. But the Buddhist point is we make choices that are contingent on things. They're not choices in an island. They're not choices that aren't affected by other things. Every choice you make is dependent upon this and this and this. So that's the Buddhist view of dependent arising. That if you make a choice, you know, for example, if you've got a tendency to be really kind and not to be angry, then you could argue, the Buddhist view is you practice kindness so often that that's your second nature. So you could argue that you don't have the choice to be angry. You could say that, because the habit to be loving is so strong in you. Now, equally, a person who's very angry, when you know, that almost they don't have the choice, in a sense don't have the choice, because their habit to be kind, because their habit to be angry is so strong. But at some point, there is, okay, I'm sorry, that's one point. It feels like we don't have a choice. But that's only one point I'm making. First, it feels like we don't have a choice. Because the habits are so strong, Buddha would say. But on the other hand, at some point, for me, as for example, as a Buddhist, when I heard the Buddhist views about not killing, I'd never heard it before, I went, oh, that's interesting. And I decided I'd stop killing. Because in my mind was a tendency to just think, I was like, well, I'm a Catholic, it's okay to kill animals because God made them. So I just took that as a given. I didn't kill many things, but I accepted that as the truth. And suddenly I hear the Buddha's view, the fact that I had an imprint in my mind from past killing, from past non-killing, when I heard it, I went, that's interesting. So then I made a choice. But I couldn't have made the choice to not kill if I could find no tendency in me to not kill. So there's got to be tendencies in there. Are you seeing my point? But it can be latent. And then you hear it one day, and the word triggers that in you, and then that new choice comes. So we do have choice, but we do have choice, but it's dependent on various factors. Whereas we tend to think free means in isolation. Do you see what I'm saying? It's quite a subtle but an important point. I mean, Buddhism would never use the term free will. It has no meaning. Free will. Nothing is free. Everything's interdependent, it means. Everything's dependent on something else. Are you with me?
Yeah.
So we can all say theoretically we've all got the capacity to make $1 million. Theoretically you could say that. We all go to the same school, learn the same class, and all pass the same exam. But we know it's just not true. I mean, that's not a very good example. Are you with me though at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
And why do quantum physicists say that? What's their logic?
Well, the non-dual thinkers and the quantum
The what? The what?
the non-dual teachers, like in Vedanta and other
Yes, okay. What are they saying?
They said basically how karma works is you're watching a screen, so it's not a video, you're watching a screen, a projection, and you can't do anything about it.
Okay, I see what you're saying. No, okay, now I hear what you're saying from the Vedanta point of view. I understand your point. Okay. They say in Buddhism that we're driven by the power of our past karma.
Yeah.
So in that sense, like I said before, if your tendency to kill is so strong, you almost like you don't have a choice. You run like a magnet, and you can't. In other words, you can only access your tendency to kill. But if it's not, if one day, this is my point. It's true. You're driven by that power, but if you've listened to some teachings that would suggest that it's not cool to kill, and the fact that you can even hear it and go, that's an interesting thought, that proves right there that you can then you can start to make choices. If you can't hear it, then you can't make choices. It's true, because the karma is so strong. But if it gets a bit weaker, and you suddenly hear something else, that triggers another imprint in your mind, which is the one to not kill, and within that is the choice. But it's a dependent choice. It's dependent arising. And karma is dependent arising. Karma is cause and effect. You can't say it's set in stone. I'd suggest that's a really nihilistic view of karma. I would suggest. You with me? A little bit? Huh? You sure?
The people who say that are very smart people.
Of course they are, exactly.
The person who said this our reality, the simulation,
Yes.
He's a
I understand.
PhD at Oxford.
No, I believe you. And I mean,
Yeah.
and when you look at the Buddhist literature, they're having these endless debates with each other, all highly evolved people. So even when we're highly evolved, we can have dumb views. I'm not saying I'm right,
Yeah.
but you know, we've got to look at these things.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. I understand your point. What else, people? Yes.
Can you were saying don't use your body, keep your body in speech
Attempt to
pure.
control it, yeah,
Yes.
and not harm others. Attempt to.
Yeah. Can you flip that round? So my girlfriend the other week did things I didn't like, so I decided I was going to be what I call in my neutral phase.
Oh yeah, and what did you do?
Well, I did not. I was just, you might call it not the silent treatment, but
No, okay.
I wasn't happy, but
Yes.
I didn't show anger, I didn't show
But
any.
were you being a bit passive aggressive about it? You think a little bit?
So because I just thought I'm not going to react to this.
Okay, good.
I'm not going to react.
Well,
I'm not
and you
going to
did.
react.
So you did well. Did it
But
help?
then she said,
Yeah.
because it was new relationship,
Yeah.
she knew something that
Was wrong.
the chocolate cake had gone.
Yes.
So she said, well, something's obviously not right.
Right.
Tell me.
Yes.
And she was sort of saying, well,
That's right.
I'm-
Exactly. And because she's feeling you're going to reject her.
yeah.
We're all worried about
So
that.
therefore, I actually broke my silence and told her what she'd, not in an angry way,
No,
but
I
I
understand.
told her.
And
So by flipping it round, because I was sort of thinking of being kind to her.
I understand. So, but did she accept she'd done something wrong?
We came to an agreement.
Oh, okay. You see, this is where, you know, really, when we really look into this one deeply, it's really simple. If, you know, I mean, was it just a thing that annoyed you, or it was really not a moral thing to do? It was unethical, or was it just an annoying thing? I mean, now, come on.
No, it wasn't a moral thing. It was just something where, you know, in a relationship, some things you say, this is a deal breaker, and some things you put up with. And to me, it was something that I just can't, that's not me. You know, like, someone might be in a relationship and say, I don't want to be with someone that smokes. For
Oh,
health
okay.
reasons.
Okay.
So you might say that's a deal breaker.
Okay, so what was her deal breaker?
Oh,
You don't want to say?
no, because it's on Facebook and.
Oh, was it?
I shouldn't have asked the
I
question.
know what you're saying. I know. So it's okay, it's
What I'm
okay.
sort of thinking of is,
Yeah.
I was quite happy being.
No, okay, no,
Quiet.
listen. But it clearly didn't work because she knew there was something wrong. So you tried your best to control your speech, but it was hurting her, and she could tell.
Okay.
So that's when, but if you'd really been brave, what it really means is you would have controlled your speech, and eventually in your mind you would have accepted that she did it and let it go. And that's the hardest thing. As these things seem so simple, but they are so hard, aren't they?
Yeah.
So it's a learning then.
Okay.
But at least you did control. But in the end, it kind of she knew, and that's when it's not tasty. That's when it's not helpful.
Alright.
And you couldn't deny.
Yeah.
And that's where, because we're so in a relationship, the main attachment we have is that we're hungry for the other person to like us. We're very scared they might reject us. So as soon as we see a sign, you're looking like you're turning your back. We have a panic attack.
Yeah.
That's how we all are. But if we both, this is where it's really hard. This is where, to really control your speech and do it genuinely without showing anything is quite difficult,
Okay.
isn't it?
Mm.
So you agree to disagree, but then, but this is a classic example, isn't it? A classic example.
Yeah.
It's not easy, this stuff. It's a simple example. It's not easy because our attachment is such a junkie to get only what we want.
Yeah.
It's really quite tough, isn't it? We recognise. What else, people? Yes, darling.
Robina, going on from this when you mentioned passive aggressive then.
Yes.
So what, and self-compassion too, so not acting out the emotion but
Mhm.
not withdrawing and suppressing.
Yes.
What's
Yeah. So we have to listen. You mean what's the difference?
what's the, how
Where's the
what's-
line?
What's the appropriate, healthy way to
Well, darling, this is
feel
where
and let it feel.
ideal scenario of really good practice in a relationship. A person does something that you don't like, that your attachment doesn't want. You accept. You accept it. But attachment, you see, is such a junkie. And then when we're first in love, and I appear like an angel, and he appears like an angel to me, it all looks just so perfect. And we believe it's all perfect. And we're just asking for trouble. Because inevitably we start living together, and then he farts in the sheets instead of the toilet, and he doesn't put the toilet... ordinary things where your attachment really gets offended. And before you know it, you can't stand the sight of this bloke. We're human beings. And we have this bizarre idea in romantic relationships that we're supposed to share everything. It's just too much to expect of an ordinary person to share every part of my being and including my constipation and my misery. I mean, it's just not fair to human beings. We should have some self-dignity and some self-respect, and it's not hiding to not share everything, is one thing I'm saying. But the other one is, it's just hard work. I mean, think about you're living in the same house as another person, and you're probably sharing the same bed as the other person. I mean, in a way, you're asking for trouble. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be mean about romantic relationships. Unless you're a really spacious person, unless you're really relaxed and easygoing, you're asking for trouble. So you're giving yourself extra practice. You're giving yourself extra reason to practice all the time. It's really hard work. Do you understand? It's really, every second of the day it's hard work. The attachment's always there, hungry for him to be perfect. Wants him to be perfect. And your attachment wants her to be perfect. And the second there's something, and of course it's so offensive, we feel so hurt, you know. I mean, it's just normal life. It's not easy. This is not easy stuff. But at least, if you can, you know, at least control the speech. I mean, I always talk about my family. I mean, not as if we're saints or anything. There are 7 siblings. We're all old now. My mother and daddy had babies very quickly. 8 babies in 9 years, so we're all old together now. I know, one died. 6 girls and a boy. So the thing is, we're very volatile, all talk fast like me, all speedy, bossy people, all, well, you know, really bossy. And so then when we're children, we all lived in the same house. We even just shared beds because they had babies so quickly they couldn't keep up with the money. Whatever. It was just, we were poor, so we lived in the same beds, had to share beds, and everything was so volatile. We shouted and yelled, and some kids got asthma, and some did this, and I got angry, and I was a bully. It was just intense volatility, 7 little human beings all together. I mean, it's really too much to ask poor little children. I mean, it's so unfair. But that's what families do. So anyway, we got old, we'd fight. And then we'd left home, and we'd come at Christmas, and we'd fight. But we still loved each other. But, you know, every time you say the words, it's out there. You can't take it away. And then when Polly talked to Judy, she'd complain, and Julie talked to Mary, and then I'd talk to Janet, and Janet talked to Judy. I mean, it's just really complicated, you know. This stuff builds up in families. Do you understand? So then I would say the last 20 years, because we're all old, there's this unspoken agreement between us now that we do not say bad things about each other behind backs, and we do not talk about things we disagree with when we're together. And I can't tell you, the harmony is so sweet. We even praise each other now, and that's hard to think. We even rejoice in each other's qualities, you know, and we're just genuinely harmonious. Because the words, we control the words. Words are so stupendous. We don't go around raping and killing each other. It's our words. But in our culture, we don't think words matter. We think it's okay to talk behind backs. We all love to. It's our favourite activity. I mean, look at the harm it does in families, not to mention work environments. We love to criticise people behind their backs. We feel it's virtuous because they're not there. Do you understand? Look at the trouble it causes. I mean, speech is a really powerful one. It's a really powerful practice. I don't mean suppress, because some people don't talk anything. They've got to learn to talk. But normally we're just so uncontrolled, and look at the damage it does, because also we will believe anything anyone tells us.
But what to do with the energy?
That's what your trouble, that's your high school practice. You work on your mind, that's your personal job. That's what practice is every day. You learn to get a bit of concentration, you learn to get a bit of meditation, you learn to know your own mind. Have friends you talk to, that's okay. But the reason to talk to a friend isn't just to badmouth people, but it's to cry your heart out so they will help you hear yourself better. That's why we have good therapists, if we can't do it ourselves. Do you see my point? We need someone to help us. But the real reason to talk isn't just to make it all worse, it's to help sort yourself out. That's nothing wrong with that, darling. That's healthy. But the thing is, eventually we can do it ourselves. We know our minds very well. We can talk ourselves through problems. We do that anyway to some degree. And that's the Buddha's skill. You get better and better and better at that. You become your own therapist, not a joke. And it's really, and that means you've got to hear your thoughts clearly, sort out what's there, and then you have discussions with yourself, just like you would to somebody else. We sort of do that anyway, but in a more coherent, clear way, not in this kind of chaotic, ridiculous way. Do you understand? And this just takes time, darling. But it's possible. We can do it. It's possible. Do you understand? What else, people? Somebody else? Yes.
Leading on from that, Robina, because I had a similar question and that came up
Yeah.
through that. When in modes of practice, if you're sitting with in modes of practice, if you're sitting like I
modes of practice.
Yeah, if I'm sitting with something that I'm finding very difficult, very
talking
intense,
yourself through to yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I go to sit, there are 2 ways that I think about it. It's either I sit and I just watch it
Okay,
go by and I breathe through
and
it.
not have a
The
conversation.
other way is to follow into whatever the emotion or the anger is and And actually, sometimes what happens then is that it unfolds and the emotion will come out and go, and it becomes impersonal, but it's gone. So I'm not sure which of those two.
No, I'm not talking about either of those.
Right.
That first one is good, just to watch it and not get involved in it. It's very helpful practice.
Yeah.
But the real one is in day-to-day life, not just on your cushion,
Yes.
is the more we become familiar with all these crazy thoughts in here, which is a big soup for us right now, the more we become clear about what it is. You can hear more clearly that's anger, that's jealousy, that's depression. And then when you're working yourself through it, you're using your virtuous thoughts, your positive thoughts, like to argue with your crazy ones. So you're speaking through you're talking to yourself in a very coherent way. That's how you solve logically the problem. It's not just feeling we're talking about. The feeling is just the tip of the iceberg. It's the conceptual stories buried in there that inform the feeling. So then when you hear the stories and you argue with anger, you argue with karma, you argue then you deconstruct the story and believe in it less.
So there is a process of argument.
Oh my God, that's what so-called analytical meditation is.
Okay.
But very intelligent,
That's what
clear, logical, using logic, because ego is illogical. It's irrational and emotional. And the good room, I like to call my roommates. Got the crazy roommates who usually run the show, and the good ones are kind of hiding under the bed and in the cupboard. Got to bring them out and argue with the crazies, but kindly.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yes, I do.
It's a really coherent, important, logical thing to do because you argue with ego's misconceptions, the ego thing. And whether you use karma, whether you use just your mind, it's up to us,
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah, I do.
But the other point is this one. Old habits die hard. So whether it's jealousy, whether it's your pain that you're causing, these are old habits. So we want them to all go away because we can't stand the pain, but we've got to have the courage to know they're old. So we let them be there. Let's, like a crazy roommate next door, you stop wishing he'd go away all the time. You accept he's there and you learn to live with him. This is really powerful practice, I tell you. Because
Sorry, may
Go
I
on.
ask, do you think you have a belief that you bring, because being an adopted person, I've had a lot of abandonment issues. Then my mother, who adopted me, there was abandonment issues. It just seems to be a cycle.
it means, okay, it's like
so what am
that's
I
karmic
doing?
habit of strong.
I'm bringing-
No, not now.
Okay,
You're not.
sorry.
No, you're not. You're not. The
Really?
Buddhists will be that strong habit from the past, and so it's like a person who's attached to food. It's just you're attached to food wherever the food is, you're attached to it.
Yeah.
And it's an old habit. You're always thinking about it. You try your heart, and you learn to live with it. It's an old habit from the past. So yours of having rejected people in the past, having cheated in relationships. This is the karmic result of that. So it's going to keep happening in all times.
Okay.
That's
All right.
the
Okay.
karmic explanation. So it's an old habit, so you learn to hear the pain, but the key one is, the Buddha's view is, these unhappy states of mind are embellishments, they've got all these extra bells and whistles on top, and they're conceptual stories, they're viewpoints we have deep in our bones, but they're not at the core of our being, and they don't define us. So we've got to learn to encourage the virtues in us, the goodness in us, the kindness. It doesn't sound like Pollyanna, but it's like what the world calls positive thinking. Have positive thoughts. Even the fact, try and think of how amazing she didn't abort you. I've got a life because of my mother. That is a tiny thing now, but it's a truth. It's a truth. It's a fact. Sort of learn to nourish yourself with that. Other things. Try and even, if maybe you can't be compassionate to her yet, thinking of some good things about yourself. And let that voice be there, but just quietly. Let it be there and don't deny, but don't buy into its story. That's the big practice. Let them just be there and not wish it would go away because the pain is all. We want it to go away, but it will eventually. Be brave. Not deal with this crazy roommate. It's okay. And nourish yourself with other parts of yourself.
Thank you.
Just very practical. Do you understand?
Yes.
And don't put ourselves down because we still have anger, still attached to food. We just tend to be, I shouldn't be like that. No, it's not true. Relax. Give yourself a break.
Thank you.
You understand? Good. What else, people? Where else? Anybody? Nothing? Hello.
My daughter's going through a divorce process at the moment.
Yes.
And the material part of things is not resolved, partially resolved, and the children part of things is sort of half and half
My goodness.
at the moment.
So painful.
And then my son-in-law's father was negotiating on my son-in-law's part, and then there was a bit of a resolution of, what might be acceptable on the financial bit.
Mm.
And then a couple of days ago he died, but the day before my daughter...
The father died.
The father...
The ex-husband died.
The sorry.
The ex-husband's father, the ex-partner's father, who was doing the
He's still
negotiating.
her husband,
I
but
understand.
he won't be in the future.
I understand.
So, yeah, the father,
I
his
understand.
father.
Yes.
So I'm trying to work out. I sort of want to go to the funeral.
I see.
And I don't know whether my daughter's feeling strong enough to go to the funeral.
Well, I mean,
And I don't
you
know
think
what
so?
to
You
do.
feel you wouldn't go without her.
Oh,
so either
no,
both
no,
of you
I
together.
can do anything by myself. My
Oh,
feeling
okay.
is to go to the funeral,
Yes.
and that she did have the opportunity to try and put it a little bit right between them before he died. But you know, I'm trying not to be too sad.
I understand.
But it's a tricky path.
So for you to decide to go to the funeral, you think is a tricky decision. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, I think that's not hard.
Which
Well,
piece then
the
now is hard?
The hard bit is imagining what the feelings of, you know, their family is towards our family at the moment. I don't know what to say or do when I see them.
I understand, darling. So it's not resolved yet. And the
Oh.
families of all the family has been involved, not just
Well, my son and I have been kept at a distance where
Yeah.
there have been no words,
That's right. I understand. Yes.
painful words exchanged, but there's been painful words between my daughter and her father-in-law.
I understand.
But to some extent that's a bit resolved because she did manage to see him before he died.
Well, that's good, isn't it?
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of...
I mean,
you
this
know,
is
it's a soup thing.
I know it
Hard to
really
weed
is, and
it
this is
out.
just ordinary. This is not like a war. This is not like war or anything. It's just ordinary human beings trying to be civilized and not murder each other. But look at the pain, the complexity of it, the hurt, the fears. It's just too awful, isn't it? I mean, this is where we just got to just be brave, to always wish to say and do what's most beneficial, to follow the right path, to try and have good ethics. And be brave enough to know that some people mightn't like you and might never like you. And that's part of our biggest... I think the attachment that I'm talking about here, the one that makes us so nervous, is we're so fearful of people not liking us. We're so fearful of... we call it upsetting people. What we really mean is we don't want them to dislike us. We can't... And like you're talking, I can only imagine their pain right now. Their daddy's dead, and all this unhappiness that got easily to dump on you. You'll be the real... you'll be the like obvious ones to dump it on. But you've got to be brave with that. Accept that. You can't stop that. And that's always the part. We can't, what we can change. If you can't. We all know that, but it's so difficult. Because if you know you've done nothing wrong, and you've not been unethical, then there's nothing to feel bad about. And that's why we have to be very strong and clear and steady, you know. Do you understand?
It's hard to sort out the weeds from
Darling, it
herbs.
really is, I swear to you, it really is hard to sort it out. You're so right, I know. You're so right, I know. It's so difficult. Yes.
So if you think, okay, like we can purify our karma and then there is some level of free will, what's the most
No,
powerful?
I would never use the word free will,
that's
because
right.
I'm just...
Choice.
Because I just... yeah, choice is a
Yeah.
completely logical word called choice,
So we
yes.
do have choice, it's not a projection per se.
Okay, we don't have choice in an abstract, generalised way.
Yeah.
We have choice in specific situations.
Okay.
So if the conditions are all there,
Yeah.
then you can, within those conditions ripening, there will be the choice. You can make choices, yes.
So what's the most powerful technique apart from Vajrasattva for purifying bad karma? So we have Vajrasattva factor, anything?
There's various ones. I mean, the Buddhist one, first of all, live in vows. Vows are said to be absolutely stupid. Live in vows of morality. The Buddhist view is every second you're keeping a vow not to kill. 24 hours a day, you're purifying the karma to kill. You're purifying the past habits, and you're practicing, creating lots of virtue in your mind just by merely, seemingly, passively living in a vow. It's said to be stupendous. Vows are said by the Buddha to be such a powerful energy that it's a subtle physical form visible to clairvoyance. Vows are so potent. So to live in vows and to purify, they're the absolute best. Absolute best. Because it shifts things at a very deep level. Shifts the obstacles. Do you understand? Who else? Yes, Ed.
I have a question I've been thinking about. So I understand the Buddhist concept of trying to generate love and compassion to all sentient beings.
Yes.
However,
And that, by the way, is university level. It's the highest.
I try and understand it.
Good, yeah.
However, when you think about it, humans are the only sentient beings who have access to their
Virtue, that's right.
So, how are they on the same level as all other sentient beings?
Okay, all sentient beings are equal only from certain points of view. We're all equal from the point of view that our minds are beginningless and endless. We're all equal from the point of view of wanting happiness and not want suffering. We're all equal from the point of view that we've got potential to become a Buddha. But we're different from every other way. I mean, a python, is not equal to the Dalai Lama in terms of goodness. Yeah. Clearly not. Because the poor old python's got some heavy-duty karma to live out. So but the fundamental basis for why Buddha's whole, in the compassion wing, the basis, the fundamental starting point, the basis, the root, the foundation of developing love and compassion for all sentient beings is the fact that they all want to be happy and don't want to suffer. And love is, may you be happy, and compassion is, may you not suffer. We've got to establish that equanimity first. Once we've established that logic that all beings want to be happy and don't want suffering, that's the basis. Then on that basis it's logical. Any other is not. Do you understand?
Yes.
And that's got to be heartfelt. And that alone takes time. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Yes, who else? Glenn, is he here? He didn't come. Where's Glenn, Kate? Oh, you're back there, are you? Oh, Glenn, I'm glad you're there. Good. I'm happy to see you. I'll talk to you later. He knows my sister. So, come on, any other questions, people?
Robina, could you talk about the process of children in
Children?
moving forward? I have 3 children.
Well done, girl.
Both very different, obviously, because they're their own people.
Of course, that's right.
This
Exactly.
is my best friend from when I was a child.
Wow.
So
You have so much to rejoice about.
Yeah, no,
I know.
exactly, I
know.
do.
Go on.
So I'm just asking, Emma and I parent so differently as well, don't we?
In what sense? You beat them and she doesn't or something? What do you say?
Yeah,
right into them.
What do you mean?
No, I'm just
So what's your question, darling? What's your question,
Yeah,
sweetheart?
I'm just asking your viewpoint
Yes.
of, I do allow my children to, what could be, I suppose, mouth off a fair bit.
Mouth off. Bad mouthing.
Not bad now.
What do you mean then?
Just, they have their opinions and strong opinions.
Sure.
What's your view on that?
But darling, I mean, that's a very big question. So what's my
Yeah,
view
no,
on
it's a
that?
ridiculous- I
Okay,
don't even know
no,
what
don't
I'm
worry.
trying
The
to-
bottom line in the Buddhist approach is this.
Yeah.
Is good ethics.
Mm.
So do your children have good ethics? I mean, some people say to me, oh, my child, and what am I going to do? My 15-year-old daughter's throwing chairs at me. And they're in cheers. And the first thing I ask the mother
Throwing
is...
chairs.
Chairs at me, she says.
Right.
And the question I always ask the mother is she ethical? Does she lie, steal, kill? Is she jumping on boys all over the place? Is she killing the animals in spare time? I mean, has she got good ethics? And if she says they've got good ethics, they will be cool.
Yeah.
So do your children have good ethics?
Yes.
They don't kill, lie, steal, cheat,
No.
jump on,
Not
seduce
yet.
boys and
No.
go behind,
Oh, not.
do you understand my point? I mean, I'm trying to be fundamentalist here. But if you've got good ethics and you've got a good heart, then that's,
They do.
you've got to notice
Yeah.
that. And then
Yeah.
the other one is, well then, so when you say have opinions, what do you mean by that? Give an example of an opinion they have.
They might talk to me about my behaviour.
Like, give an example.
I'm trying to think.
And how old is this child?
I've got a 19, 16.
And which one tells you off
13.
for your behaviour?
19, 16.
And what will they,
13.
okay, what will they give an example of what they're saying?
If I'm maybe, I don't know, drinking alcohol.
And what will they say?
You drink too much.
Okay, do they live in your household?
Yes.
All of them?
Yes.
I mean, for me, for being a mother and a child, they're sort of adultish, but they still live with you. Do
Yeah,
they pay
they're
rent?
19, 16. No.
So you still take care of the 19-year-old?
Yes.
What are they doing with their life, this 19-year-old? Some 19-year-old, they're having children and mortgages already.
No, I know.
What do they
That's
do?
Emma's.
This 19-year-old, what do they do with their life?
They're working to go and they're doing paramedics next
Excuse me, and
year.
they don't pay rent?
No?
Excuse
That's
me?
my fault.
Well, you get what you deserve. As a mother, you get what you deserve, 'cause
Yep.
that's attachment.
Yep.
You allow them to not be responsible. You're allowing him to be greedy, to keep his own money, to buy on his own things. You allow him to speak to you with a rudeness because you've been too soft and too equal with your children. Forgive me, I'm trying to be old-fashioned
No,
here. But
I
it's like
wanna
you're
hear
getting
it.
what you deserve, and you don't even ask him to pay rent. How dare he? Who does he think he is? What's he do with all his money? Stick it in the bank, use it for what?
He's saving his money.
Yeah, not giving his mother money. Excuse me, you're getting what you deserve. You're allowing him to not even be an adult boy at the age of 19. He's got a job, saving it for what? Himself? Yeah. Excuse me, that's what I'm hearing. So maybe you've been too soft. And I mean, they all probably they love their mother, but they've got no right to talk to their mother like that. I'm sorry, they're very rude and arrogant. That's very rude, but you've allowed it.
Yeah.
So it's your mistake. I would suggest that.
And I agree.
Well, that's good. Okay. But it's really shocking. It's really shocking this boy doesn't pay rent. Why don't you ask him for rent? Would you give me a reason, please? Because you're scared of upsetting him, aren't you?
No.
Why?
No, I'm not. Do you think I'm scared?
Why? And why don't you ask him for rent when he's earning money? Why? He's a grown-up. Many people at 19 have their own houses and own jobs.
At 19
I don't care. Why aren't you asking him to pay rent? Have you got a valid reason, darling?
I thought my reason was valid,
What
and
is
I
it?
thought to
What is
help
it?
him get ahead.
Excuse me, but getting ahead, people who get ahead have to have responsibilities. They pay taxes, they pay rent, they do all these kinds of things. So kindly start charging him rent if he wants. Why is he living in your house? Because it's convenient and he saves more money, so he's being selfish and you're allowing him to be selfish. Get ahead. Very nice of you, but he has to pay rent. That's what people who get ahead have to pay rent.
Yes.
So then start charging him rent, I'd suggest, and getting him to respect you more. That's my suggestion.
Thank you.
That's a pleasure.
$100 extra. $100 extra for her.
I was just trying to make conversation.
Anybody else have any questions about things?
Robina,
Where are you? Years ago, baby.
I went to a teaching with His Holiness about maybe 10 years ago, when he talked about, it was mainly about dependent arising.
Yeah.
And I just have a question about, I had this discussion with my father, because my father's brother died a year and a half before I was conceived. And I was saying to my dad, we were just talking about it, and it was a beautiful conversation. And I said, I could have never known Michael because the fact that...
Are you losing me? Where's the question?
The question is because one thing happens, then it makes sense that the following thing happens. So any one of our lives comes from a place of the things that have come before. I'm trying to understand karma and how it works. So I could have never known my uncle.
What's your question, darling?
My question is...
There's no question. I know. I think you're overthinking it in the wrong way, frankly.
Right. I think my question is about dependent arising.
Dependent arising
does that have
things-
anything to do with it at all or not?
Well, yeah, I mean, the first level of dependent arising is things that have causes.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever's there is the fruit of causes. That's the first level of dependent arising.
Mm-hmm.
But then the way you're putting connections is a bit sort of because of this and therefore, then I would never have done, therefore, well, you can say all that, but you can't just go on and on. It's not really helpful.
Okay.
I would suggest.
Okay.
It's romantic. It's a bit romantic. And that dependent arising is quite a rigorous argument.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, whatever, darling. It's okay.
What
else,
does that
people?
mean?
Never mind. Well, come on, shush.
Okay.
What else? Come on. What else, people? Come on, some questions. I want more meaty questions, please. About suffering and dramas and jealousy and depression and what to do. Yes, Ed.
I've noticed you sometimes comment on Western culture and Western relationships.
All right. What I do?
Do you have anything to offer us with, I guess, to contrast that maybe with Tibet, how Tibetans view these
I've no
things?
idea how Tibetans do. I don't know about Tibetan culture. I don't know. I know a few Tibetans. But I don't know. I have to say, I don't know. I'm not trying to be Tibetan I only know because it's my culture. I come from the same culture as, you. But I mean, I would say from the bit I've seen and observed of Tibetan culture, but they're all in the West now. They're all pumping it just like us, full of ridiculous and deluded and getting angry. I mean, the Dalai Lama said he's really sad to see Tibetans get angry now. They used not. And that's an interesting concept because we think anger is a healthy, good thing. But if you have the view of karma, you don't get angry because you don't say, how dare you do that to me? Because they have a cause. They know why it's happening.
Yeah.
So I would say for sure, I mean, even among Tibetans, the nomads, they used to have 2 husbands and two wives. So it clearly shows they didn't have much attachment. They didn't have marriage and certificates, it was just convenient. You live together, a couple of brothers, they get this nice girl, they live in a tent together. But then they get divorced, no big deal. So there's less drama around the way and this is not being rude to my Christian upbringing, because I was a very devoted Catholic, but it's called, sex is kind of called a gift from God. And you're only supposed to have it with God's blessing. There's no view like that in Buddhism. So therefore there's no drama about marriage. Therefore there's no drama about divorce. Therefore but they didn't have much of that because they weren't very attached. They didn't have much attachment. So when a relationship ended, they said bye-bye, there was no big drama. I mean, there must be little dramas. But when there's attachment, a lot of attachment, there's always dramas. So I'd say we in the West have masses of attachment, and you can see the proof of it in the way we've constructed our culture. With our intelligence, intelligence and attachment mixed together is our culture. We're able to create these genius things, but they're all to get attachment and get what it wants. So look, I mean, when I was a kid living in Murrumbeena, we, this old car with this house. Who heard of heating? There's only a heater on here because I keep telling Jason as being typical Australian having no heaters on. We never had heaters. You shivered after your shower. You didn't get upset. But if I walk into a house now, having lived in America, I get upset if it's cold. And if you're in the car, look at in the car. Who never has their heater on in the car? You always have your heater on in the car, and it's got to be the exact temperature. It's slightly too hot, you get hot. Slightly too cold, you get cold. So the more you create with intelligence things of attachment, the more upset you get more easily. Do you understand? So when you've got a really simple culture like Tibet, when they had,
Yes.
I mean, we go up, every year, did we get the postcards out? Jason. Where's Jason?
He's
gone.
Oh, he's coming. Yeah.
Jason, did I put the postcards out? Bring me some postcards.
Zip.
They're down in my bag, you better get them.
Yep.
I don't know where I put them. Where did I put them? Oh, they're in my briefcase. And this is my advertisement time now. So when we do some advertisements. So when the 3 years now we've been going up to, doing a trek up to Laudo, where Zopa comes from in the mountains, 4,500 metres up there. Well, it's cold, okay? And so we call it difficult because it's cold. And they live in a really basic thing up there. Annie's Sumpton, this Zopa's mother, she's nearly 80. She's been running this place and growing the potatoes and walking up and down the hills for 50, 60 years. And this is their life. But we get up there, we're exhausted because our attachment wants comfort. It's as simple as that. As simple as that. So the more, there we go, give us the two. Give us. So the more, no darling, one of each. Oh, clearly. There's two lots. The trek and those. And now I want the trek.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, darling. So the more we have attachment, and the more we're intelligent and creating new objects to make us happy, the more likely they're going to change or not work, so then you get more upset more easily. So it's clear we have more attachment, therefore more suffering. Do you understand?
Yeah, so
It's really clear.
Do you feel like the way society is changing and developing is a result of our negative karma? Do you feel like
No. Having more beautiful things and having lovely houses and lovely possessions and heating and computers, that's a result of unbelievable good karma, unbelievable virtue, but it comes along with attachment. So we poison it by being attached to it.
So our response to these things, not having them?
Our response, so so we become grasping after it, and then we end up not getting any pleasure from it at all. Do you understand?
Yes.
So this is my advertisements. This is a postcard for the trek. We'll put some out. It's the fourth one we've done this year. We're doing it next year. We go up to the mountains up there to Lama Zopa's cave up in the Sherpa, up in the country. Sherpa land, up where in Nepal. That's wonderful. We go, starting Kopan Monastery, we go walk, we go to Lukla, fly Lukla, 4 days of walking, 5 days of walking, then we spend 5 days in retreat up in the mountains. It's like 10 below in the morning. It's quite chilly down up there. And that's for 15 days, and that raises money for Lama Zopa's cave up there. And this is a pilgrimage we've been doing since 2001. Leading in Nepal in all the holy places of India. It's an amazing experience, and that's every year, and that's one is in October this year. That's me with the elephant. So the postcards are out there. You're very welcome. Except I know the Australian dollar's gone down, so it'll be a bit more expensive for you because it's US dollars. I'm sorry about that. That's my ads. Yes, darling.
With attachment to environment,
Yes.
where's the like with having a conducive environment, like I find myself, I have a lot of attachment, or a lot of aversion to the city, and a lot of attachment to
The country.
like the
Well, that's,
mountains.
you got to be careful of that because having an aversion to city means having an aversion to people. So that's very opposite to bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas love the city because it's where the people live. Who's in all those cars on the freeways? Who's in all those buildings of 40 stories and the lights are on? Human beings. Who's in the trees? A few ants and a few koala bears, They just need they need us to leave them alone. The humans need our help. So maybe have more compassion and then have an aversion to the noise, but then if you start thinking who lives in those houses and who lives in those cars, it opens your heart. It's very powerful. Do you understand? Does that make sense? Try it. So it's nice to have the mountains, it's good. It's nice to have the trees in the mountains, but so that you can get yourself together so you can become more happy, so you can get back to the city and help people. Speaking sort of metaphorically. Do you understand? Yeah. I'm happy the trees are there. I just don't need to see them. That's I'm happy. I'm the opposite. Give me the city any day. What else, people? Yes.
Can you mix different levels of practice, or should you stay at one level going in sequential?
Oh, darling, excuse me, I have to fix my knee here. I went to the physiotherapist today for my meniscus. Excuse me. Give me that. Okay. Sweetheart, you do what you're capable of.
Okay.
I mean, you choose your teachers, you choose your path, you've got to know what you're capable of. So if you're learning music and you're capable of playing African drums in the morning and, you know, Bach cello in the afternoon, then go for it. But if you can't, there's a contradiction. You have to know where you're at and know what you can do.
It's just some things seem very easy for me. And other things
Some
are
practices.
Like, yeah, some practices
Yes.
which, from listening
Yes.
to you, are more advanced.
Yes.
And they seem, some are more easy, and yet to me the real basic stuff, don't get angry, is probably my hardest one.
I know,
You know.
but we can also do, I mean, we've got to know where we're at.
Yeah.
We've got to know our danger points. We've got to know what we need to learn. But also we can use other tools every now and again. Like compassion and love is really taught in the more advanced levels.
Yeah.
But that's a really powerful antidote
Yeah.
sometimes.
But that's what's easy. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was with you in January in
Yes.
Nepal,
Yes.
you were telling the story about your alcoholic friend and the woman that said accepted that
That's
the
right.
husband was
An alcoholic, that's
Yeah.
right.
And my job wasn't good, and I went, she's right, to hell with this, I'm changing my job.
Oh, okay.
I did it.
So it was helpful to you?
So I went and got a new job, and
Well
I've been
done.
it in a month.
Well, then
But
congratulations.
the driving behind it more money
Yes.
is so that I can donate more to the projects I support
Well,
in
that's
Nepal
good.
and
That's
so on.
wonderful.
So
Nothing
that
wrong.
the compassion bit is they're easier for me.
Well, that, okay.
You know,
I know, but no, we
getting up
sometimes,
and
I
not
know, I
saying
understand.
something
I
like
know, I understand that.
a swear word or
That
something
shows we
is
have
quite
different
hard.
imprints, doesn't it? I know,
Yeah.
I know that. So we have to see where we're at and what we can do and do our best.
Okay.
But be realistic about yourself.
Okay.
That's important.
Okay.
That's important.
Yeah.
What else, people? Yes, at the back there. Yes, darling.
Rabina, anxiety seems to be the buzzword. I'm in education, and
Yes.
students have anxiety for this and
Okay,
anxiety for that.
okay, let's talk about it.
Where does all this sit?
I
Because
understand, darling.
is it you know, shooting themselves of responsibility, or the fact that the parents
No,
aren't
darling,
supporting
I
them to be
understand, I
responsible? But
understand.
what do we do with that? Because
I
it seems
understand.
to be
A
just
huge one.
rampant. It's
That's
huge.
right, darling, I understand. Well, if we just I'm just using this way we're describing here, if we can imagine this, all of us having this really intense emotional hunger to have everything nice. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Every second. So it's inevitable that because the world is so busy with so many things and there's so many things to do now, then it's more easy to not get what attachment wants. That actually is also anxiety. That's where this meeting point between, and holding all the balls in the air, we just can't handle it. And so especially when it's pressure to pass exams, and that's when it's really tortured, you know, because we suddenly have self-doubt, and then we also, again, the attachment to being seen as a successful person, the attachment to not being a failure. So all this is just inevitable. But putting it in these terms, this attachment really rampant, very strong attachment, but with a life that's extremely busy with many things and many, so it's inevitable they're going to crash together and we can't handle all those different things. But the other one is too, another component of that, because our minds are so scattered and we don't have any concentration. So you can imagine a person, which is the Buddhist technique of doing mindfulness meditation, a very simple concentration technique every day, where you really train your mind to stay on one thing. You're training it to be strong, in other words. So when you're going to have that capacity, that when a lot of things are happening, like even if you're on the freeway and there's suddenly many cars and you've got to get over from one lane to the other, when you've got some focus, you don't lose the plot, so you don't get anxious. But it's only when you're worried about the cars next to me thinking, and you're worried about what next door thinking, and you're worried about the person in front, and then that's anxiety, is unable to cope with what you're doing because we've got attachment. And that's, I mean, it sounds so easy, these words. It's the Buddhist way of saying it. And it's just, and also it's like, as a teacher, I mean, how do you help people? How do you help
Yeah,
the
that's
kids?
my question.
How
How
do
do I,
you?
as an
But how do
educator-
you? What do you? How do you just give them love and give them lots of confidence, lots of love, lots of courage?
Try to deconstruct perhaps,
Yeah.
you know, the thoughts
Perfect.
and then the
Yeah.
feeling and then reconstruct in a way that
Also,
perhaps is...
But that's perfect. But also sometimes I just think, it's not trying to be patronising, just you're doing amazingly. You can do it. You have the courage. You have the capacity. You are able to do it. I trust your wisdom. Giving people confidence. Because it's lack of confidence and you panic, you know. Lack of confidence is anxiety. You can't handle what's in front of you. Isn't it? And then then also because we A combination of things. But I think your job you're doing beautifully, but is to give people courage. I mean, we all know that when we were kids, I was a kid, I'll never forget the people who gave me courage. I'll never forget the ones who praised me and said I'm doing well. It's like nectar to have that. It gives you such courage and it lessens anxiety, it lessens fear. Wow, I can do it. And they'll remember you. It's powerful. That to me is a powerful role of a teacher.
Yeah.
You do that, surely. Love them and praise them.
Try our best and
Well, that's
sort of
it.
focus on one step in front of the
Exactly,
other. And,
exactly, darling.
Again, just start small and then continue to bring
Exactly,
on extra
exactly,
layers.
exactly. Exactly, exactly. Giving people the courage, letting them know that you're confident in them, and not always trying to. See, that's the thing with parents too. We try to make it all nice. We try to answer every question. But sometimes if a kid comes to you and asks advice, you don't have to give advice.
No.
I trust your wisdom. You'll make the right choice. Forcing someone also to grow up. You understand?
I suppose that's sometimes a dilemma in terms of when is it genuine and when is it just an excuse not to do something.
No,
and
also
to
that
shed
too.
yourself of
Exactly.
responsibility.
No, it's true. Exactly. And
We're
that's
going
when
back to the paying for rent.
that's
When
right.
is it that I don't want to hand in the homework or do the work or I want the rights?
And
but
that's
I
where
don't
you
want
have to have the wisdom to know.
responsibility?
But that's where you've got to have the wisdom to know their mind.
Yeah,
Well enough, isn't it?
and tap into that.
It's not an easy one. Being a parent or a teacher, my God, I don't know how you do it. I always say if I was a parent, they'd be dead children, you know. Forget having them not pay the rent.
I'm a teacher as well.
Oh my God, okay. Well, at least you've got a good heart, darling.
Thank
But
you.
a good heart's not enough. Meaning well is not
No.
enough. Compassion's not enough. You've got to have wisdom as well.
Yeah.
And that's the clarity. And that should come. And wisdom, compassion is the wish to help. But it's wisdom that gives the power and the strength to our ability to help. That's wise compassion. And then then your children cannot abuse you. They wouldn't abuse you.
Yeah,
They wouldn't.
yeah.
What else, people? Yeah.
I mean, let's say someone got tantric empowerment. How do the tantric deity help us? And
Oh, I can't talk about that tonight.
Okay.
I'm not going to talk about that tonight.
Too big.
Yeah. You had a question?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm a huge fan of yours.
Oh, good. Okay. Good.
I've been trying to work on my attachment. I've been trying to eliminate my attachment with, especially with somebody.
Yes.
I've tried meditation on impermanent death and also.
Wow, you're doing well.
Yeah, I know. And emptiness as well.
My goodness.
Sometimes it works.
Yes.
But I'm not sure why my feeling toward that person is really strong still, even though
Now we're talking about these personal things. If you have to, we have to analyse it. Okay. So what do you mean? What do you mean by the feelings are strong? What do you mean by that? I'm sorry. You have to say
attached.
attached to this person.
Yes. Although
You mean you
tried
want? I mean, I have to ask you questions. Do you mind talking about it? Or is it difficult?
Not really. Ex-boyfriend.
Oh, okay. Ex-boyfriend. Okay,
Yeah,
ex-boyfriend.
yeah,
So you still want to be with him? You
Yes.
think about him?
Yes.
You're feeling sad not to be with him?
Even though what?
You're feeling sad that you're not with him?
Yes.
He rejected you or you rejected him? He rejected you. Well, that's extra pain, isn't it? I mean, God.
Yeah. That's why what I'm trying to do is meditate on
darling.
impermanent death and
I know, but all you,
emptiness,
I know, of course,
Yeah.
you're doing beautifully, but I think the point is here, sweetheart.
and wish that person to be happy.
Yeah, all
as
of
well.
this,
Yeah,
I know, all of this.
everything,
But
yeah.
the point is this. You're doing perfectly. There's nothing better you can do
Yeah.
except be patient and know that there's a time period between sowing a seed and bringing the fruit. But because of attachment being such pain,
Yes.
and attachment is a junkie that wants everything to be nice. So the attachment here for you is you wanted all the pain to go away, don't you?
Yes.
You want the pain to go away. So you have to learn to live with the pain. So it's a bit like, I've said this before and you must have heard it, but it's really true. If you begin to sow seeds in your garden, if you expect the tree to come the following day, you will only be disappointed, won't you?
Yeah.
So you have to be delighted that you're sowing the seeds. The garden might look really messy, but if you've sown the seeds and you are sowing the seeds, the fruit will come eventually. So you've got to put up with the ugly garden having no flowers in it, but you've planted the seeds, and that alone should make you happy. And eventually the fruits will come. You're doing all the right things. So one day you will see the result and your heart will stop hurting. So meanwhile you have to live with it and not think there's more you should be doing. You're not making, you're making no mistakes. It takes time for it to go away. Are we communicating?
Yes.
You're doing everything right, but those seeds will eventually ripen,
Okay.
and you'll feel okay.
All right.
So you have to learn to live with it, and leave it
Live
just
with
be
the
there.
pain.
Feel it, hear it. Try not to buy into it. Try not to let it drag you down. Hear it, and let it be there. But know you're sowing all the right seeds. You're doing all the right practices, and try to delight in that.
Oh.
Are you seeing my point?
Yes.
If you were just sitting there being miserable and not doing anything, then the result will never come. But you're sowing the right seeds. That is the biggest practice for all of us. We have to know you sow the seeds and then let the pain be there, because it won't go away overnight.
Yeah.
But you're
her hearing, her sight,
yes,
and continence.
of course. It
And
must be so difficult.
mobility.
It must be so difficult.
What do you say to
I
help
know,
a
darling. Is it
person
your
like
mummy or
that?
something? Is it your mummy or your grandmummy or something? Just
My-
a person you know.
Yeah, my former neighbor,
Your former
whom
neighbour.
I visit.
Oh, darling, I
and,
know. She's alone,
No, she's not. She's surrounded by family.
but she can't
she's
get the good from it.
really-
She's always depressed, sad.
She wants it to be over.
I understand, darling. Do her family love her, or just sort of?
Very, very
They
much.
do.
Very much.
She can't get the nourishment from it. Does she have any?
Feels like she's a burden.
I understand. She feels that.
Mm.
Wow.
She thinks that if she were to go,
I know they'd be
then
better for them.
they wouldn't have
I
the back
know,
aches
darling. This
and
is so
everything
sad, you know.
That
She hasn't any spiritual views at all.
she's Christian.
Okay. Okay. You can't make her stop wanting to die, but you can then, maybe you can help her look forward to going to heaven with God. Does she have faith in God? Do you think it's real faith? She has faith in God.
I believe so.
Then you just talk to her about God. Try and get her to be happy. Instead of wanting just to die, which is depressed, get her to look forward to going to heaven. That'll lift her. I mean, I'm really serious here. That's one of the techniques in Mum Zopa's book about how to help at the time of death. You know, that's a powerful thing to do for somebody who's a Christian. I mean, if you're a materialist, all you got to do is all you've got to look forward to is a black hole. That's not useful at all. If you're a Buddhist, you try to look forward to a new life. But for a Christian, Lama Zopa said, it's using someone's attachment skillfully. So you try to tell her how God loves her. Think about God. Read lovely things to her about heaven. I mean, I'm really quite serious here. To lift her heart, at least lift her heart. You can't get her to feel less depressed. You can't force her. But lift her heart and say, it's true, you will die soon, darling. We will all die soon when the time is right. And think about heaven and talk about heaven. Read books to her. Truly, I'm serious. To lift her heart so she starts moving her thinking from just, I want to die, to I want to go to heaven. It will change her mind. Really and truly, it's quite skillful. And reads lovely, or just talk about God loves you. God is all love. God is waiting for you. God is love. Heaven is beautiful. Honestly, and she's got faith, it could help her. I can't think of anything better to do, quite frankly.
As a Buddhist,
Yeah.
you mentioned about no killing.
Yes.
What is your view about assisted dying?
Well, that's the thing, okay. Because of the Buddhist view is that the consciousness continues, okay? The other Buddhist view is, and this is very clear in the Tibetan Buddhist and the Vajrayana teachings, there are these very detailed descriptions of the death process. It's very laid out very clearly exactly what happens. And so there's this very specific explanation about as you start to die, first your body gets heavy, your eyes start to go, your ears start to go, and about that point before you stop breathing, a very powerful that's about the time that the karmic seed, because everything you think and do and say leaves seeds in our mind, like we're carrying around these bank vaults of seeds. And the seed that will be the one that will trigger your next birth, like for your case, it was a virtuous seed of not killing, that was of virtue and morality that was triggered, that caused your consciousness to be programmed to go to your mummy's womb. You've got a human mummy, okay? So for at the time we die, the karmic seed will be triggered that will determine your next life. So if your mind is happy and peaceful, it'll be a virtuous seed that will be triggered. If your mind is depressed and sad and angry and hurt, it'll only be a negative seed. So your key job, so therefore, if you kill a person, help them die, and their mind might be depressed, then that's just, it's like the worst possible thing. You're just putting them from a frying pan into the fire. It's not a moralistic issue, don't kill. It's simply that if a person is depressed mind and they die, then when that will trigger a negative seed which will give them a really suffering rebirth. Do you see what I'm trying to say? That's the practical explanation in Buddhism. So then the thing is to help a person be content and be happy, to give her something to think about, to give her CDs of prayers. I mean, she mightn't play them, but all you can do is try and lift her mind from being depressed and unhappy. Do you understand? And self-hating. And you do what you can with that. Talk about, I mean, all I can say is that's one, if she has got faith in God. If it's not that strong, and probably they don't talk to her about God, but maybe you should. Get her to think about God. Get her to hear prayers. Get her to sing hymns, things to lift her mind. Even just hearing beautiful religious music can lift her heart. So lifting her heart, and she will die soon, and it'll make it lighter for her. Do you hear my point? The psychology of it. Think about that.
Thank you.
What time are we supposed to finish?
9.
Oh, soon. Yes, sweetheart.
Pardon me. I've had about 3 years of illness.
Oh,
And-
darling, non-stop.
Yes.
Really? My goodness.
And I have taken this to be karma. Now,
Well, that's just the Buddhist view of everything. I mean, if there are flowers and weeds in the garden, they've all got seeds. That's a given.
yes.
So then, question?
Do I just say, stop, I've had enough? Or do I just continue what I've been doing?
What do you mean by stop and have enough? You're going to kill yourself? What are you talking about?
No, I'm not going to
What do
kill
you mean?
myself. No, I'm saying,
What do you
okay,
mean?
enough karma. Just, I think I've served my sentence.
Darling, listen, if you can change your sickness, please change it. If you can't, then my policy is this. It's bad enough being sick. Why be miserable as well?
Well, I've tried that.
Are you here?
too.
Well, all you can do is that. There's no other solution. There is no other answer. I'm sorry to be so brutal. There is no other answer, darling. And it's not easy. Have a little weep. And try and count your blessings. And you've got a nice partner who loves you.
Yes.
You've got a sister who loves you.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, look. See?
There are so many wonderful things, but I think,
Yeah.
okay, enough. I think
It is
I've
enough.
served my
It's true.
sentence.
We don't like. I know that. We don't like suffering. I agree with you.
Well, thank you.
What can you do? What else, people? Rosie, yes.
Robina, this is a question with that other lady about her sister dying.
Yes.
You know that now there's a new law that if you are terminal and you within a certain amount of time that you have left, you can actually choose to die.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who are in that situation, in terms of karma, you were talking about, a negative frame of mind. Maybe
Yes.
they're not depressed, but they
Yes.
foresee that they've got maybe 2 months to live and it's going to be awful and painful and terrible.
Yes.
And they make the decision based on, I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, that's right. This is where, put it this way. We have negative states of mind, which are I-based, and I'm not criticising us. It's understandable. Life is tough. That's attachment. It wants what it wants. Then there's aversion when it doesn't get what it wants, and all the other variations that come. This is completely normal for a sick. So then, if that is what's triggered at the time we're dying, then they're negative. Or it's the only option is you have negative state of mind, which is I-based and fear-based and anger-based and depressed-based and anxious-based. Although it's not being negative, it's just how it is. It's not being unhappy. It's not being critical. Then you have virtue, which means a mind that's light and spacious and compassionate and loving and kind. So if that's virtue, we have to help. If they're going to die with virtue in their mind, but the fact that you want to kill yourself, I can't think of anybody with a light, joyful mind who wants to kill themselves. So it has to be negative, the reason. It has to be negative. Even if it doesn't, even if it's just a sort of, we understand it, but it's still unhappy and wants, and the fact is we don't, the Buddhist, the way the description from the great meditators and yogis of this process, at the time of death, before you stop breathing, the thing that triggers the karmic seed is the state of your mind. But no matter whether it's even positive or negative, it's a very powerful, intense, fear-based grasping that shocks us, more serious than in ordinary life, that comes out of nowhere, comes out of the blue. Now, nobody knows that. So when that happens, can you imagine if you decide to kill yourself and then you start the death process And suddenly you freak out completely and there's nothing you can do about it. Can you imagine the pain, the torture, the shock, the horror in your mind? So it's a really kind of dangerous thing to do from the Buddhist perspective, not being moralistic. I mean, not being moralistic. These great yogis can die whenever they feel like it because they're in bliss, they know what they're doing, you know. It's not a moralistic one. It's just given the way the mind is, and we don't think that way in our culture. So to kill yourself, to want to die sooner because you can't bear the pain, that's called aversion. I mean, it's just practical. It's like playing with fire. And of course, no one thinks of reincarnation, so of course you can't force people to believe in reincarnation. I'm just giving you the Buddhist explanation. Best is to have loving friends around you, support, playing prayers if you're religious. I mean, even though she's got it, she still can't feel the benefit of it. But, you know, what can you do? You can only do so much. But even hearing mantras and things, even hearing prayers can leave an imprint in her mind that can help her when she does die, to die peacefully. There's things we can do, you know. Yes.
So we're just on that, the seed versus a virtuous life. If you've lived a very virtuous
Yes.
life and
Yes.
you've got good ethics,
Yes.
but you know the mind's up and down, or
That's
something's
right.
happened, or
Sure.
it's you know a smash accident, something happens,
That's right.
and the mind doesn't happen to be in a virtuous
Yes.
state, or that fear rises.
That's right.
How much does the past actions of
I
your
understand.
life
I
impact
understand.
the future birth?
I understand. Well, it's a bit like asking, I've driven for 50 years without an accident, and one day you have an accident. I mean, an accident's still an accident. It doesn't counteract the fact that you drove well for 50 years. Unfortunately, there's millions of karmic seeds in there, and you know. But the thing is, it's logical if you really practice ethics and you really practice every day, and you really relate to impermanence, and you're really giving up attachment and anger. It is logical, even in an accident, you'll die well. It's not like irrational. It's likely you'll die well. That's the main way to live your life. And that you've gotten used to it, and you will die well, even in dire circumstances, more than likely. So I think it's a logical thing. You see my point?
Yeah. Yeah. But if your mind's up and down,
Well, that's natural until you hardly realise. Until you realise emptiness is going to be up and down.
and then it's down.
But ethics
like
is
that
ethics is a really powerful base. Non-killing, non-harming, non-stealing is a very powerful base.
Because what you talked about, this fear of grasping
Yeah,
that
that's right.
rises,
It rises,
in our
yes.
I mean, if that happens to most of us,
Yes, it does.
then aren't we all sort of heading?
No, but if that's why as Lama Zopa says in this book, if you're going to help anybody during their life when they need you most, is at that time you help them navigate. You're like holding their hand metaphorically through the situation. If they're Buddhist, let's say you'd play their Buddhist prayers, you'd say mantras in their ear, you'd be there making them feel safe, because we all need someone to rely upon. We need a good friend. So that's why if you can be even with her when she dies, it's the most precious gift. So yeah, I mean, things can happen, but there's ways to ensure that people die well. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. I mean, we all have fear, so we all know when we have fear, we turn to somebody for help, don't we? So if you can have someone who can be with you to help you, that's so powerful, so beneficial. Help a person calm their mind. Even a little pussycat, if you can calm their mind. Even a little mouse, and you can make them peaceful. That's really helpful for the mouse to die kind of a good death, you know.
So if you've done a lot of loving kindness practice,
Yes.
and you draw on that, and you're able to draw on that
Yes.
at that time of death, and that
Yes.
should carry you
That's
through
incredible.
that fear. So that fear.
Absolutely, absolutely. The fear's still there, but because it's like you're navigating it well, and the virtuous karmic seed will be triggered for sure. Yes, absolutely. Lama usually says karma takes care. Yeah. What else? Yes.
Can I make a comment? Something.
Yes.
I think I heard it at Copana. It might have been something.
Yeah.
Every time something bad happens to me, even to the point when I stub my toe.
Yes.
I actually, and it's ringing in my ears now, Lama Zopa saying, rejoice!
That's
rejoice!
right. Of course, that's
because
right.
I think, oh good, that's another bad cut, that's another negative
That's right,
karma
exactly.
sequel.
Now, that's right, exactly.
You know, so when I'm sick
Sure.
or whenever something's
Yes.
bad happening,
That's
I
right.
try and I say to myself, this is good, negative karma.
I know,
right?
exactly.
Be happy,
I know.
be happy.
We're trying
And
to,
I
we've got to
actually
try and
find
practice that,
does,
don't we? It's true. No. I know. So when I was did a conference in Florida, in Miami or somewhere, and there was a Jew. It sounds like a joke. It was a Jew, a Catholic, a Lutheran, and a Buddhist. And the topic was why do bad things happen to good people. And so, of course, I did my trip about karma. It was easy. And the rabbi clapped. He said, we have the same view. He was a Kabbalah rabbi. He said, they have a saying. every time something bad happens, we say, great, one less debt to repay.
Yeah.
So there you go. She thinks she's paid up. No more debt, sorry, baby. Be happy every time. There's one less debt to repay.
Great, thank you.
I mean, he even was in Miami, all these Jews with the audience. He was cracking jokes about Hitler, I swear to you. He's a Kabbalah rabbi. He was a wonderful man. He was very interesting. Anyway, any other questions? Yes, sweetheart.
My husband had leukemia and 2 bone marrow transplants, and when he went in the final time to hospital, his breathing was very challenged, and he had the mask, breathing mask on, but then he was eventually in the ICU unit,
Yes.
and they thought they'd have to sedate him
Yes.
to look at his lungs.
Yes.
And so he was in the ICU unit for a while, and then the decision was made at a family meeting that, you know, he wasn't going to keep living.
Yeah.
So they, you know, pulled all
Pulled the plug.
So his mind was sedated with
Yes.
his choice.
Yes.
You know, and
I
I imagine
understand.
that he thought, well, I thought he was going for life because he always said on his deathbed he might ask for the priest.
Right.
But he didn't do that, you know.
Yes.
As far as I know, he didn't ask for
Sure.
the priest. So what happens to a
Well, this is where it's
sedated
hard.
mind?
I know, darling, it's hard to say. I mean, okay, we know ourselves. Okay, when you're sedated or in a coma, that's exactly, in the Buddhist view, that's exactly the same as the dream mind. So we know when you're dreaming, you can have the weirdest dreams. You can have fearful dreams, depressing dreams, yucky dreams. You can have very radiant, light, blissful dreams. We know that, you know. So when you're sick, then you've got very little control. So it depends on the kind of man he was.
He was a good man.
He was moral and
He was
kind.
moral.
Well, then, you know, you could say easily, it depends on him, his mind might have been very peaceful. The Buddhists would always say, try and be conscious when you die.
Well, he wasn't.
Better.
Yeah,
No, I understand that, I understand that.
Yeah.
But, so it was your husband?
Yeah.
So you do anything like pray? You didn't play mantras or prayers while he was in there in the coma?
My sister-in-law's a Buddhist, and her husband was a Buddhist. And, I was
And they
a
were
bit of a
playing
Buddhist.
mantras and prayers while he was in the bed?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay then. And right there. Okay then. That could really help. I mean, but next to him.
Yeah.
Well, this is, I mean, I have many stories, and I have one example. When people are unconscious, I mean, in dreams people are aware of things. I know this woman, a friend of mine in Sydney, Judy, who was deeply unconscious in the ICU in Sydney, and I went every night there and just said prayers in her ears and mantras in her ears, and every now and again I'd say, she was a close friend of Sakya Trinzen and a friend of another Lama, 2 Lamas. So every now and again I'd say in her ear, she was totally unconscious, I'd say, Judy, Songsa Kensei Rinpoche is praying for you. Judy, His Holiness Sakya Trinzen is praying for you. So she came out of a coma, all perky and happy. They didn't know if she would or not. And the only thing she can remember, she had was this husky voice, she didn't know it was me, like thought it was a blue lady coming through the window, saying, Judy, Songsa Kensei Rinpoche is praying for you. Judy, His Holiness Sakya Trinzen is praying for you. I have many stories like that. So the power of prayer and mantra, they say, is super, and at just subtle level you can be aware. So it's the most precious gift. He will be fine, baby.
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Robina, I understand that when vets are...
What, sweetie?
When vets are performing euthanasia on animals...
Oh no, poor vets, they kill half the time, don't they? It's very
They
depressing.
do, but
Go
they deliver, I don't know what, like opioids or something,
Yeah.
as well as at the same time as the anaesthetic.
I understand that.
Right? And so... you might remember me from Bodhisattva last year. I
I
was the one
do.
who killed my dog.
Yes.
So she was in extraordinary pain, and her organs were slowly stopping working.
Yes.
So she was going to die that night.
Yes.
And the vet delivered the anaesthetic and the opioids that she changed. She calmed. She became like she was being really affectionate in those last moments, and her mind would have been quite happy again.
Did she? So she didn't hear any mantras or anything?
She did.
She did hear. She did
heard
hear.
some mantras, but I was thinking more importantly that her mind was in a more virtuous, happy state when she died because she had the anaesthetic and the opioids.
I understand. It's just hard to say, you know. I mean, I can't. It's hard to say, isn't it?
She was obviously in pain, and then she was obviously rubbing her head on me and being affectionate.
Before she died.
Right.
Well, see, that could be attachment, that could be virtue. That's right. I mean, you've got to be clairvoyant to know the answer. But all you can do is we can see indications of things, you know.
I
And
was
that's
just,
where-
I was just extrapolating when the
Yeah.
debate started
Yes.
in Victoria
Yes.
about the new law.
Yes.
Whether it's possible if somebody, say they were Buddhist and they were looking ahead at a debilitating, extraordinarily painful
Yes. I understand that.
future,
Yes.
short future,
Yes.
where they might not be able to practice anymore, meditate
I understand that.
anymore.
Well, see, that's
where they
where,
might
in the
then end up
end,
for
that's true. Theoretically, the motivation could be pure, but it's all a question of whether you're equipped to deal with the suffering. I mean, look at those Tibetans. The Dalai Lama was always so sad, who burned themselves. Do you understand? The Tibetans who had the purest of motivation, I'm quite sure, and then they put themselves on fire, and then they're running down the street screaming in agony. They weren't qualified to deal with the pain. Remember in Vietnam, those famous picture? Those monks would have been, they probably would have had single point of concentration. So they were able, once they burned themselves, because they were perfect at concentration, they would have gone straight to a subtle level of mind, which is beyond the sensory. They were capable of dealing with it. You've got to be capable. It's a highly realised thing to have capability at the time of death. The greatest yogis have that. So simply speaking, even most humans, that's why it's important to help the human through it, navigate it, and certainly to help animals. But it's hard to know what their karma is. It's like, but in general, that's why to play safe, you support a person and allow them, to die peacefully. But the other thing is, I've heard the Dalai Lama say, now with the methods we use, now that we've created these methods to keep people alive for hundreds of years, haven't we? So it's kind of, we've created a dilemma for ourselves. So you need, in the end, to have to make a decision. Okay, pull the plug, And that is very common among Buddhists as well. So I know one of my friends in Santa Cruz who had a heart attack. He asked his wife to not call the ambulance, but she forgot and called the ambulance because she panicked. So they took him to the hospital. We took him and we went to see them in dawn. He was all wired up. You knew he didn't want it. So we did all the prayers that he wanted, and then they pulled it. So then it seems to me this is what we have to do these days. But it's got to be the purest motivation from the person's side. Not aversion, not fear. And theoretically, even you can imagine wanting to end your life because, I remember the Dalai Lama said, because you can be practical, all the money that you'd spend, you use that money for something virtuous. You can have a good motivation in this situation we created for ourselves in this world where people just don't die naturally anymore, So it's got to be so cautious. You do it at the right time. You probably consult the monastery. You'd have prayers right around the person, including the animal. But it's always better not to do it, not to intervene, to try and do it naturally. Because then it's just risky karma for oneself and it's risky for the person. It's like taking risks with people. That's all. Do you understand? But it's not easy. My goodness. Well, we can go home tonight. It's time to go.